Chapter 1087. Yi Xian looked at the huge dragon occupying Buzhou Sacred Mountain. "Amu, this is?" Amu said softly, "The last true dragon of the Tendo era." True dragon. At this moment, he thought of the true dragon bloodline. There were three main bloodlines in the world: his mad demon bloodline, mortal bloodline, and the true dragon bloodline. True dragon. Yi Xian asked, "What's the difference between a true dragon and a heavenly dragon?" Amu said with a smile, "There's a big difference. There are many types of dragons. Among them, true dragons are the highest level because their bloodline is the purest. Next are demonic dragons. Demonic dragons are also true dragons, but they have darkened. And then there's the heavenly dragon. Whether it's strength or bloodline purity, a heavenly dragon is far inferior to a true dragon." Yi Xian looked at the true dragon and said, "Why is it here?" Amu smiled faintly. "I made a mistake. I was imprisoned here by the Tendo to guard Buzhou Mountain." Hearing this, Yi Xian's eyelids twitched. "I made a mistake," Amu said softly. "The Tendo is much stronger than you think. After all, it's the Tendo of our fifth dimension." Yi Xian looked at the still sleeping true dragon and said, "Amu, what's your goal?" Amu said, "Follow me." After saying this, she walked towards a rugged path in the distance. Yi Xian hurried to catch up. This place was extremely dark, and there was an oppressive atmosphere everywhere. The true dragon in the distance was still sleeping, and there was no sign of it waking up. Yi Xian asked, "Amu, if it wakes up, will it attack us?" Amu looked at the true dragon and nodded. "It definitely will." "Yi Xian," Amu said with a smile, "it's fine. As long as we don't provoke it, it shouldn't wake up for the time being, unless the Tendo wakes it up." "Tendo." Yi Xian looked around. "Does the Tendo know that we are here?" Amu blinked. "Maybe. Perhaps." Yi Xian was speechless. At this moment, Amu suddenly said, "We have to speed up." Yi Xian looked into the distance. "Just on foot?" Amu nodded. "Let's walk. If we ride on the sword, we'll easily alert the true dragon. With your current strength." At this point, she suddenly stopped talking. Yi Xian asked, "Is there a big gap between us?" Amu nodded slightly. "After all, it's a true dragon. According to the ranking of the heavenly dragon race, he should be at the 9th vein. 9 patterns." This time, Yi Xian knew what was going on. Amu sped up and looked into the distance. "We're almost there." Yi Xian did not ask any more questions. About an hour later, Amu brought Yi Xian to a stone door. The stone door was thick and heavy. On it, there were unknown runes. Yi Xian looked at Amu. Amu smiled. "We're here," Yi Xian said. "Amu, this is." Amu did not say anything. She walked to the stone door and looked at the runes on it. Her eyebrows gradually furrowed. Yi Xian was also proficient in runes. He looked at the stone door. The runes on the stone door were very strange, and he had never seen them before. Amu said, "We must unravel these runes." Yi Xian asked, "Can't we just barge in?" Amu shook her head. "No." With that, she approached the stone door and gently stroked the mysterious runes on it. "Interesting," Yi Xian said. "Can you understand it?" Amu said softly, "I have to study it." With that, she took out an ancient book and flipped through it. Yi Xian also helped to read it. At first, he did not understand, but fortunately, Amu would explain it to him. Just like that, after about a market, Amu suddenly stood up. She quickly pressed her hands on the stone door. Soon, the runes on the stone door lit up. It was activated. Amu turned to look at Yi Xian and grinned. "It's a success." Yi Xian nodded. He looked at the stone door and it slowly opened. Soon, a dark wind drifted out. Yi Xian pulled Amu behind him. A sword intent appeared out of thin air and blocked the cold wind. Amu suddenly said, "Let's go in." With that, she pulled Yi Xian's hand and quickly walked inside. The two of them walked along the small path, and before long, they arrived in front of a stone temple. In front of the stone temple, there was a statue of a man. The man wore a simple black robe, and in his left hand was an ancient diagram, while in his right hand was a round shield that was intersecting black and white. Yi Xian looked at Amu. Amu said softly, "Salute." With that, she respectfully saluted the statue of the man. Yi Xian hesitated for a moment and then also saluted. Amu said softly, "You must be very curious about who he is." Yi Xian nodded. "Yes." Amu said. "He is called Shi. He is one of the founders of our human civilization. At the beginning of the birth of the five-dimensional universe, there were only Tendo and some other creatures. But later on there was the human race. And at that time, humans did not have spiritual wisdom. Their behavior was no different from wild beasts. Later on, some outstanding human powerhouses appeared on this land. She was one of them. At that time humans were weak. It was they who led humans to fight against heaven and earth, against the ancient demon beasts, and created the human civilization." As she said this, she looked at Yi Xian. "Strictly speaking, they are the ancestors of our human race. They are worthy of the respect of all human powerhouses. Moreover, all humans should remember them." Yi Xian said softly, "So that's how it is." As he said this, he turned to look at Amu. "You came here to see him?" Amu suddenly pulled Yi Xian's hand and walked in front of Shi. She looked at the statue of Shi and said, "Emperor Shi, the person beside me is kind and loyal. He is qualified to take on the responsibility of the future of the human race. If Emperor Shi is willing, you can hand over the 8 trigrams and the Tai Chi shield to him. He will not disappoint Emperor Shi and revitalize the human race." Yi Xian was speechless. The statue did not respond. Amu hesitated and then said, "Emperor Shi, are you really not going to consider it?" The statue still did not respond. Amu was silent. Yi Xian smiled and said, "It's okay. I already have many treasures." Amu shook her head. "It's not the same." Yi Xian was puzzled. "What's the difference?" Amu shook her head slightly. She looked at the statue of Emperor Shi and slowly closed her eyes. She seemed to be saying something, but Yi Xian could not hear her. Yi Xian looked at Emperor Shi. At this moment, Amu suddenly opened her eyes. She looked straight at Emperor Shi and muttered something. Yi Xian could not hear a single word. After a while, Amu suddenly turned to look at Yi Xian. "Are you willing to fight for the human race?" "Fight for the human race?" Yi Xian was stunned. Amu looked at Yi Xian. "If you agree to fight for the human race, from this moment on, you will shoulder the heavy burden of the human race's civilization. You will become the true king of the human race, the king of the human race." Yi Xian said in a low voice, "Amu." Amu looked straight at Yi Xian. "Answer me. Answer me seriously. This is not a joke. Once you agree, you will bear a huge burden. Not only that, you will become the king of the human race. You will have a heavy burden on your shoulders. Fight for the human race." Yi Xian was silent. He knew that Amu was not joking. Once he admitted to it, Yi Xian would have to bear more responsibility. "For the human race." Yi Xian said in a low voice, "Amu, I am a selfish person." Amu said, "But from this moment on, you can change yourself. From now on, not only will you fight for yourself and your family, but you will also fight for the entire human race." Yi Xian smiled bitterly. "Amu, I don't have that strength." He could lie to others, but he did not want to lie to Amu. Amu shook his head. "Strength is not a problem. The problem is whether you have the heart." Yi Xian looked straight at Amu. "I don't." He said whatever he wanted to say. Right now, he really did not think about why he would fight for the human race. This was too great. Hearing Yi Xian's words, Amu turned to look at the statue of Emperor Shi. At this moment, the statue suddenly split open. Then, a shadow appeared in front of Yi Xian and Amu. It was Emperor Shi. Emperor Shi glanced at Amu, then looked at Yi Xian. He smiled and said, "Young man, you are quite honest." Yi Xian bowed slightly. "Greetings, Elder." Emperor Shi floated in front of Yi Xian. He looked at Yi Xian. After a moment he said softly, "You are quite considerate." Yi Xian was completely confused by her words. Emperor Shi looked up, his eyes full of worry. The greatest enemy of this world is not others, nor is it the impending catastrophe, but ourselves. Whether it is the human race or other races, the greatest enemy is ourselves. But all living beings and races have no other way. Because we have to survive. As he said this, he looked at Yi Xian. There was a hint of complexity in his eyes.
Back then I was not as good as you.
As he said this, his body gradually became illusory. At this moment, a moose suddenly said, "Bow." Yi Xian hesitated, then bowed respectfully. Emperor Shi looked at Yi Xian. "When you are powerful enough, remember that you are a human. Although we humans have internal strife and kill each other, remember that the human civilization should not disappear from this universe. And you are the inheritor and guardian of the civilization." Yi Xian smiled bitterly. "Elder, the human race will not recognize what you said." Emperor Shi smiled slightly. "They will recognize it." Yi Xian was a little puzzled. At this moment, a moose suddenly said, "Hurry up and thank Elder Emperor Shi." Yi Xian was silent for a moment. Then he bowed respectfully. "I can't guarantee anything, but I will try my best." Emperor Shi smiled slightly. "That's enough." As he said this, his body became completely illusory. At this moment, an ancient map and a round shield suddenly fell in front of Yi Xian. In addition, there was also an ancient seal. The seal was only the size of a fist, and its 4 sides were engraved with mountains and rivers. As for Emperor Shi, he had disappeared without a trace. Yi Xian looked at Amu. Amu opened her right hand, and the ancient map appeared in her hand. Looking at the ancient map in his hand, she whispered, 8 trigrams map." Yi Xian quickly asked, "What's the use of it?" Amu said softly, "I'll tell you later." As she said this, she picked up the seal and said, "This is the seal of the human ruler. With this seal, you can summon the 12 generals to fight for you. Not only that, but from now on, any seal, enchantment, and matrix in the world will be ineffective against you. Most importantly." As she said this, she looked at Yi Xian. "This seal can let you obtain the power of faith of the human race." Chapter 1088. Humans' Power of Faith? Yi Xian was somewhat puzzled. What is humans' power of faith? Amu said softly, "It is a special type of cultivation power. The more people that believe in you, the stronger you will be. If the entire human race believes in you, your strength will be very, very terrifying." Saying that, she paused, then continued, "However, this is very difficult. Now is not like the past. The human race itself is fighting amongst themselves. The people's hearts are lax. Wanting the entire human race to believe in you is as difficult as ascending to the heavens." Yi Xian said in a deep voice, "That is to say, this is useless?" Amu shook her head. "How can that be? This is the human ruler seal. It is the symbol of your identity. This seal is extremely useful to you. Do not lose it." Yi Xian nodded. "I will keep it well." Saying that, he looked at the 8 trigrams diagram and the Taiji shield in his hands. Amu took the Taiji shield from Yi Xian's hands. "For now, this shield is the most useful to you." Yi Xian looked at the Taiji shield. "How is this shield compared to the torch dragon shield?" Amu rolled her eyes at Yi Xian. "How can your torch dragon shield be compared to this shield?" Yi Xian blinked. "This shield is much stronger than the torch dragon shield?" Amu nodded. "The strength of this shield is far beyond your imagination. Come, drip a drop of your blood. Let it recognize you as its master." Yi Xian nodded. With a point of his finger, a drop of blood flew into the Taiji shield. Boom! The Taiji shield trembled violently, then directly turned into a white light of intersecting black and white, entering the space between Yi Xian's eyebrows. Yi Xian was stunned in place. Soon, a mass of white and black gas appeared around his body. These 2 masses of gas revolved around his body. Gradually, an illusory black and white shield appeared around him. Taiji shield. This Taiji shield was not real, but illusory. Yi Xian glanced at the illusory Taiji shield. With a thought, the Taiji shield immediately disappeared. Yi Xian looked at Amu. Amu chuckled and said, "This is the toughest shield known so far. Other than that, this shield also has Emperor Shi's divine power. It is truly impenetrable." Yi Xian looked at Amu. "Invincible." Amu nodded. "Even the legendary Tendo blade can't hurt it. With this shield, you're invincible, except for a few extremely strong people." Yi Xian was silent for a moment. Then, he took out the executing heaven sword and gently slashed it against his Taiji shield. Chi! The sword slashed down, but the Taiji shield was not damaged at all. It was as if his sword had slashed onto cotton. Yi Xian was truly shocked at this moment. One had to know that his executing heaven sword could even break through the defense of the 8th Division Heavenly Dragon. However, it could not hurt this Taiji shield at all. At this moment, Amu said again, "Even if your sword was 10 times stronger, it would not be able to hurt this shield." Hearing this, Yi Xian's face was full of shock. "It's that terrifying?" Amu nodded slightly. "This shield contains endless mysteries. It's known as the #1 shield of the human race." Yi Xian blinked. "Amu, aren't you from the Wu clan? How did you become a human?" Amu smiled and said, "Whether it's the Wu clan or the Deity clan, we are all humans in essence. It's just that we are from different camps. But in the end, we are all humans." Hearing this, Yi Xian understood. As if thinking of something, Yi Xian hurriedly asked, "Amu, can Haotian and the others break my shield?" Amu shook his head. "They can't." Hearing this, Yi Xian was delighted. At this moment, Amu said again, "But if you fight them, you'll definitely be the one to die." Yi Xian blinked. "Why?" Amu rolled his eyes at Yi Xian. "Because you can't do anything to them. This shield can only guarantee your safety, but it can only be used for defense. If they fight you, they can exhaust you to death. Do you understand?" Yi Xian nodded slightly. "Understood." Simply put, they couldn't beat him to death, but they could exhaust him to death. Yi Xian picked up the 8 trigrams and said, "Amu, what's this?" Amu said, "The 8 trigrams contains a set of arrays." Yi Xian blinked. "Arrays?" Amu nodded. 8 trigrams array." Yi Xian asked, "The human race's first array?" Amu said with a smile, "The 8 trigrams array can only be considered the human race's second array." Yi Xian quickly asked, "What's the human race's first array?" Amu rolled his eyes at Yi Xian. "I knew you would ask this. Let me tell you, the human race's first array is at Tendo. And this 8 trigrams array is mainly for defense. Once this array is activated, even the 5th dimension tribulation can be resisted." "What?" Yi Xian suddenly said in astonishment. "It can even resist the 5th dimension tribulation." Amu glared at Yi Xian. "Let me finish. This array can resist the 5th dimension tribulation, but only in a very small area. For example, this Buzhou God Mountain. If the 5th dimension tribulation comes, this array can protect Buzhou God Mountain, but outside of Buzhou God Mountain, it doesn't have this ability." Hearing this, Yi Xian understood. The Taiji shield was a single target defense, but this 8 trigrams array was a full-body defense. Amu suddenly said seriously, "Let me tell you, you promised Emperor Shi that you would protect the human race in the future." Yi Xian nodded. "I will do my best." Amu nodded. "As long as you do your best." Yi Xian looked around then said, "Let's go back." Amu shook her head. "I still need to bring you somewhere else." After saying this, she pulled Yi Xian's arm and walked outside. When they were outside, Yi Xian discovered that the true dragon was still sleeping. Looking at this true dragon, Yi Xian suddenly thought of that true phoenix. That true phoenix was also very strong, but unfortunately, its brain wasn't very good. It had just been freed, but it wanted to say harsh words to Tendo. Even though it couldn't defeat its opponent, it still wanted to say harsh words. In his opinion, this was stupid. Amu led Yi Xian towards a small path in the distance. Right at this moment, lightning suddenly flashed and thunder rumbled in the sky. Yi Xian raised his head and looked up. Within the dark clouds, lightning was densely packed, and strands of invisible might swept down. Amu suddenly said, "According to the ancient records, this Mount Buzhou was once a pillar that connected the heavens and the earth. Unfortunately, it was smashed apart." Smashed apart. Yi Xian's eyelids twitched. Who was that powerful? Amu smiled and said, "An expert from the Tendo era. As for his name, I don't know either. That's because even we don't know much about the heavenly law era. I only know that there were quite a few experts from that era." Yi Xian said softly, "Era after era was destroyed by the 5th dimension calamity. And now, the 5th dimension calamity is coming again." Amu looked at Yi Xian. "Are you afraid?" Yi Xian nodded. "A little afraid because I don't want to die." Amu smiled and said, "Then you have to work hard to become stronger." Yi Xian nodded. The current him, his only goal was to become stronger. Amu suddenly pointed into the distance. Do you see that small mountain? Yi Xian looked in the direction where Amu was pointing. In the distance, there was a small mountain. The small mountain was lying between two large mountains. From time to time, lightning would fall on the small mountain. However, the lightning did not destroy the small mountain. Instead, it entered the small mountain. Amu said softly, "It is said that a great god is imprisoned there." Yi Xian looked at Amu.
A great god is imprisoned there?
Amu nodded.
Yes.
Yi Xian asked, "Who imprisoned it?"
Amu said softly, "Tendo."
Yi Xian wanted to ask more, but Amu suddenly said, "Don't ask one question at a time. Let me tell you what I know." Yi Xian was speechless. Amu said, "In the era of Tendo, two great gods fought over some benefits. One of them knocked down Mount Buzhou in a fit of rage. When the mountain fell, the balance between heaven and earth was lost. Countless living beings around Mount Buzhou died tragically. In a fit of rage, Tendo suppressed him here so that he would never be able to rise again." Yi Xian said in a deep voice, "Amu, was this Tendo guarding this land?" Amu nodded.
Yes.
Yi Xian was a little puzzled.
Then why did she disappear later on? Amu said softly, "Maybe she was disappointed." Yi Xian asked, "Why do you say that?"
Amu shook her head. "I don't know the specifics either. That Xiao Dao should know a lot." Yi Xian shook his head slightly.
"That woman won't tell me."
Amu smiled.
"You're just too curious about everything."
Yi Xian was about to speak when the mountain in the distance suddenly trembled. Countless rocks rolled down. Yi Xian and Amu looked at the mountain. Yi Xian said in a deep voice, "Don't tell me that whatever god is coming out?" Amu blinked. "It's possible." Yi Xian looked at Amu.
"Shall we go?" Amu said softly. "The other party should have discovered you."
Yi Xian was about to speak when Amu suddenly said, "Let's meet him." With that said, she led Yi Xian towards the small mountain. Soon, Yi Xian and Amu arrived in front of the small mountain. At this moment, the small mountain shook violently. Yi Xian was about to speak when a bolt of lightning suddenly descended from the sky and landed on the small mountain. Boom! The entire small mountain shook violently. Yi Xian looked at Amu.
"I think he was beaten."
Amu nodded. Yi Xian looked at the sky and said, "Could it be that the Tendo forbade him from coming into contact with us?" Amu looked around.
"That's possible," Yi Xian said. "Then shall we go?"
Amu nodded. "All right." With that said, she pulled Yi Xian and left. At this moment, a voice suddenly came from the small mountain. "Please wait." Yi Xian and Amu stopped and turned to look at the small mountain. On top of the small mountain, an illusory figure suddenly appeared. Amu looked at the figure.
"What's the matter, senior?" The figure said. "The old man would like to ask for a small favor from the two of you."
Very straightforward. Amu shook her head. "Your Excellency, we are just passing by." The figure fell silent. Amu said again, "Your Excellency, we are really just passing by." The figure suddenly said, "This person beside you is the new king of Human, right?" "Human king." Yi Xian looked at Amu.
Amu blinked and said, "Yes." The figure said, "Your Majesty the Human King, please lend a hand."
Yi Xian fell silent.
The figure said again, "Your Majesty, are you afraid of the Tendo?"
Yi Xian nodded.
"Yes."
The figure said, "You are the Human King, your status is not inferior to the Tendo." Yi Xian looked at the figure. "What's the use of status? I can't beat him. P.S. I don't know when the epidemic will end. I'm eating cabbage in my hometown every day." Chapter 1089. Identity. He really didn't think that there was anything special about a human king's identity. Strength. Strength was the way of the king. In the distance, the figure was silent. At this time, Yi Xian said, "Your Excellency, we don't want to offend the Tendo. Please understand." The Tendo had already given him a lot of face. He couldn't take it too far. Yi Xian turned to look at Amu. "Let's go." Amu nodded. Amu led Yi Xian away. Behind them, the figure didn't say anything, but he didn't disappear either. He just stood there. In the distance, Yi Xian suddenly said, "Amu, you seem to know this place quite well." Amu smiled. "I did." Yi Xian looked at Amu.
You brought me here to let me obtain the inheritance of Emperor Shi?
Amu nodded.
Yi Xian asked. Why?
Amu blinked.
Why what?
Yi Xian said, why did you let me inherit the inheritance of Emperor Shi? Amu smiled.
Because this way, you will have more means to protect yourself.
Yi Xian looked at Amu and didn't say anything. Amu smiled. Do you know why Emperor Shi chose you? Yi Xian said, I know. He didn't just choose me. There are other reasons, right? Amu nodded. Yes. So, you need to work harder. Because you don't have much time left. As she said this, she looked at Yi Xian and said softly, you haven't experienced the fifth dimension tribulation. You don't know how terrifying it is. Yi Xian was silent. Fifth dimension tribulation. He indeed hadn't seen the fifth dimension tribulation, but he could imagine how terrifying it was. Since ancient times, how many experts and civilizations had been destroyed by the fifth dimension tribulation? At this time, Amu said, my intuition tells me that this time's fifth dimension tribulation will be different from the previous ones. Yi Xian frowned. What do you mean?
Amu shook his head. I can't say.
It's just intuition. Yi Xian was silent. About an hour later, Amu suddenly stopped. Not far in front of her, there was a stone tablet. The words on the stone tablet were very strange, and Yi Xian could not understand them. Amu walked in front of the stone tablet and bowed slightly. Yi Xian followed suit and bowed. Amu looked at the stone tablet and said softly, buried here is an expert who once made great contributions to the human race. As she spoke, she walked in front of the stone tablet and whispered something. After a moment, Amu frowned slightly. Yi Xian looked at Amu.
What's the matter? After a moment of silence, Amu said, let's go.
With that, she bowed again and pulled Yi Xian away. Yi Xian was somewhat puzzled.
Amu, what's the matter? Amu said softly, we came late.
Yi Xian glanced at the stone tablet. Someone beat us to it? Amu nodded.
Let's go.
Yi Xian nodded slightly.
Let's go.
Amu looked at Yi Xian.
You're not disappointed?
Yi Xian smiled.
Disappointed about what?
Amu looked at Yi Xian and did not speak. Yi Xian chuckled. I never thought that other people's things should be mine. If I can obtain it, then it's my fortune. If I can't obtain it, then it doesn't matter. Amu blinked and said with a smile, that's a very good attitude. Let's go. At this moment, there was a sudden explosion from afar. Yi Xian and Amu looked at the source of the explosion. That was where the figure they had met earlier was. Yi Xian frowned. Don't tell me he's going to force his way out?
Amu suddenly said in a deep voice. This is bad.
Yi Xian looked at Amu. What?
Amu's face was a little gloomy.
He's alerting the true dragon.
As soon as she finished speaking, a powerful force suddenly shot up into the sky from the small mountain in the distance.
Very quickly, this force swept towards the slumbering true dragon. Seeing this, Yi Xian's eyelids twitched. He grabbed Amu. Let's go. With that, he and Amu disappeared on the spot. And just as they were about to exit Buzhou's sacred mountain, an invisible force suddenly enveloped him and Amu. At the same time, the exit was sealed. Yi Xian and Amu looked at each other and turned to look. At this moment, on top of Buzhou's sacred mountain, a huge dragon head was looking down at the two of them. It's awake. Yi Xian said softly, can we beat it? Amu shook her head. No. Yi Xian asked, then what do we do?
Amu said, reason with it.
Yi Xian was speechless. Amu looked up at the true dragon and bowed slightly. Greetings, True Dragon Senior. In the sky, the true dragon looked down at Yi Xian and Amu.
Its eyes were indifferent as if it was looking at an ant. Amu blinked and then he said, defend.
When it heard Amu, the true dragon suddenly roared furiously, and a powerful draconic might swept down from the sky. Yi Xian's expression changed drastically when he saw this force, and he didn't dare to underestimate it in the slightest.
With a command in his mind, the Tai Chi shield suddenly appeared above his head.
Rumble! A deafening explosion suddenly erupted in the sky. At the same time, the entire Buzhou mountain trembled. A powerful draconic might surged towards the surroundings like a wave. As for Yi Xian and Amu, they were completely fine. The Tai Chi shield had forcefully blocked the attack of the draconic might. Yi Xian was slightly shocked. This was the first time he'd used the Tai Chi shield, and he hadn't expected it to be so strong.
In the sky, the true dragon looked down at Yi Xian's Tai Chi shield with a trace of doubt in its eyes.
Emperor Shi's shield.
Amu looked straight at the true dragon.
He has obtained Emperor Shi's inheritance.
The true dragon looked down at Amu.
So what?
Hearing this, Amu blinked, then turned to look at Yi Xian.
This guy doesn't want to give Emperor Shi face. What should we do?
Yi Xian spread his hands and said, "Let's just leave it as it is."
Amu was speechless.
At this moment, the true dragon suddenly said, "Those who trespass into this world shall die."
As soon as it finished speaking, it suddenly roared at Yi Xian and Amu below. At the same time, a huge dragon claw descended from the sky, as if it wanted to crush the earth. Seeing this, Amu's eyelids twitched.
She retreated to Yi Xian's side and said, "F***ck him."
Yi Xian was speechless. Without thinking too much, Yi Xian hurriedly took out the Tai Chi shield. When the dragon claw landed on the Tai Chi shield, the entire Tai Chi shield shook violently. Although the Tai Chi shield blocked the dragon claw, Yi Xian's face turned pale at this moment. The Tai Chi shield was invincible, but he was not. Every time he used the Tai Chi shield, it consumed a lot of his energy. If the Tai Chi shield withstood a strong force, he would also be affected. At this moment, the dragon claw suddenly pressed down. Boom! The Tai Chi shield shook violently. Yi Xian immediately felt a strong force. Fortunately, his physical body was strong enough to resist this force. At this moment, Amu suddenly said, "Your Excellency, we have no enmity with each other. Do you really want to kill me?" In the sky, the true dragon looked down at Yi Xian and Amu.
"Those who trespass into this world shall die."
As soon as it finished speaking, it pressed down again. Boom! At this moment, heaven and earth trembled. Under the Tai Chi shield, Yi Xian's face became even paler. Yi Xian looked at Amu.
"Is there any way?" Amu said in a low voice. "Hit him."
Yi Xian blinked. "Okay." After saying that, he suddenly removed the Tai Chi shield and rushed up to the sky with the executing heaven sword. He slashed at the dragon claw. Boom! The dragon claw was directly repelled by Yi Xian's sword. Yi Xian was struck dumb at the sight of this. "I don't think I'm that weak."
As if reading Yi Xian's mind, Amu suddenly said, "You're not weak to begin with."
As soon as she finished speaking, the true dragon suddenly swooped down. Yi Xian's expression changed. He raised his right hand to the sky and the Tai Chi shield quietly appeared. Boom! The Tai Chi shield forcefully blocked the true dragon's attack. However, at this moment, the entire Mount Buzhou trembled like an earthquake. It was extremely shocking. Under the Tai Chi shield, Yi Xian's expression became ferocious. Gradually, a powerful bloodline power surged out from within him. Boom! Yi Xian roared furiously as he shot into the sky with his sword in hand. In an instant, countless rays of sword energy slashed down like a torrential storm on the true dragon. With the help of the bloodline power, Yi Xian's combat strength instantly soared. Countless rays of sword energy landed on the true dragon's body, and streams of blood sprayed out incessantly. However, such an injury was really nothing when compared to the true dragon's enormous body. Yi Xian noticed this as well. He charged up to the true dragon's head and stabbed his sword at its head. Meanwhile, the true dragon suddenly roared furiously, and then its long tail swept towards Yi Xian. Everywhere its tail passed, space was instantly obliterated into nothingness. Yi Xian had no choice but to withdraw his sword when he witnessed this scene, and then his figure flashed and vanished on the spot. When he appeared again, he was over 1 kilometer away. However, an enormous dragon claw suddenly clawed at him from afar. Yi Xian issued a command in his heart, and the Tai Chi shield appeared in front of him again. Bang! The Tai Chi shield shook violently, but Yi Xian was completely unharmed. The true dragon's gaze suddenly became ferocious when it witnessed this scene, and it stared fixedly at Yi Xian. "Damnable human! How dare you provoke me?" Yi Xian had an emotionless expression on his face. "Hit me then. Kill me if you can." The true dragon suddenly roared furiously, and then it smashed forcefully towards Yi Xian. Yi Xian's eyelids twitched, and then his figure flashed to the side and appeared over 1 kilometer away. The true dragon's attack missed, and the entire divine Mount Buzhou trembled violently. Moreover, the space where it collided directly collapsed and transformed into a deathly still area. The true dragon turned to look at Yi Xian, and it was just about to attack again when a moo suddenly said, "Stop fighting!" Yi Xian looked down at a moo, and a moo pointed at a hill in the distance. "True dragon, you made that hill collapse." The true dragon turned to look at where a moo was pointing. The hill had already collapsed, and a faint ray of light slowly floated up. The true dragon's expression changed drastically when it witnessed this scene, and it turned to look at Yi Xian and roared furiously, "Human, you've caused a huge disaster." Ah! Yi Xian was speechless. Chapter 1090. He was in big trouble. Yi Xian blinked. All of a sudden, he also had a hunch that something bad was about to happen. In the distance, the figure that had just appeared became more and more solid. Soon, a middle-aged man in a long robe appeared in Yi Xian and a moo's line of sight. The middle-aged man wore a simple robe and held a strange weapon in his right hand. The weapon looked like a harpoon, and the tip of the weapon shimmered with aqueous light. And behind the middle-aged man's head, there was an aqueous halo floating there. The middle-aged man looked no different from a human, but upon closer inspection, Yi Xian realized that the other party might not be human, because the other party had unknown scales on his face. Yi Xian looked at a moo. A moo shook her head. "I don't know him." In the sky, the true dragon stared at the middle-aged man who had just appeared with a grave expression. A moo gently poked Yi Xian's shoulder with her right hand. "Let's leave." Yi Xian nodded. "All right." With that said, the two of them were about to leave. At this moment, the middle-aged man suddenly looked at the two of them and said with a smile, "The two of you, are you leaving just like that?" A moo blinked. "Congratulations on escaping, senior. You've just escaped, so you must have a lot of things to deal with. We won't disturb you anymore." With that said, she pulled Yi Xian and left. At this moment, the middle-aged man suddenly laughed. "I'm afraid the two of you won't be able to leave." Just as he finished his sentence, a powerful stream of water suddenly appeared in front of Yi Xian and a moo. A moo's expression darkened. The middle-aged man looked at Yi Xian and smiled. "I still need a little help from the two of you." A moo pointed at the true dragon in the distance. "Aren't you going to deal with him first?" The middle-aged man glanced at the true dragon and smiled. "It's just an evil creature." With that said, he turned to look at the true dragon. "Evil creature, if you ran just now, you might still have a chance to live. Now it's too late." With that said, he pointed the strange trident forward. Boom! A jet of water suddenly shot out. In the distance, the true dragon roared furiously and directly crashed into the water pillar. Rumble! Along with an explosion, the dragon was suddenly blasted away. After that, an invisible pressure enveloped the dragon. At the same time, countless water chains had suddenly appeared around the dragon, and they tightly bound it to Mount Buzhou. Utter defeat. Seeing this scene, Yi Xian and Amu's faces immediately darkened. This true dragon didn't even have the strength to fight back? Yi Xian glanced at the middle-aged man. This guy's strength was a little terrifying. The real dragon stared at the middle-aged man. "Shengong, is the Tendo still here?" "Tendo." Shengong looked up at the sky and smiled as he said, "The heavenly Tao," Yi Xian suddenly said. "Don't tell me you're not even afraid of the Tendo." Shengong looked at Yi Xian and smiled. "Are you trying to provoke me to fight the Tendo?" Yi Xian smiled. "Senior, the Tendo is still here." Shengong nodded and smiled. "I know he's still here, but so what?" Yi Xian looked at Shengong. "Are you really not afraid of the Tendo?" Shengong smiled. "I really can't beat the Tendo. However, if I'm not wrong, he's definitely not in this world now. Otherwise, I won't be able to escape at all." Hearing this, Yi Xian was silent. In fact, he had also guessed this. Shengong turned to look at the true dragon and smiled. "Evil creature, are you very disappointed?" The true dragon stared at Shengong. "The Tendo is everywhere." Shengong shook his head. "The reason you think so is because you're too weak." The true dragon suddenly turned to look at Yi Xian below. "Human king, you're responsible for sealing him." Yi Xian's eyelids twitched. "Damn, now you know I'm a human king." Shengong turned to look at Yi Xian and smiled. "He just received Emperor Shi's inheritance, how can he fight against me?" Yi Xian was silent. Shengong looked at Yi Xian.
I can spare you too, but you have to do one thing for me. The true dragon roared. You can't agree to it.
Shen Gong suddenly waved his right hand, and in an instant, a water chain whipped the true dragon's head. Bang! The true dragon's skin split open, and blood splattered everywhere. Seeing this scene, Yi Xian and Amu looked at each other, their eyes filled with shock. How terrifying was the true dragon's defense! However, in front of Shen Gong, it was as fragile as paper. At this time, the water chains kept lashing the true dragon's body, and with every lash, the true dragon's skin would split open. It was a tragic sight. Shen Gong ignored the true dragon and looked at Yi Xian. Little brother, do you mind if I do you a small favor? As he said this, he did not wait for Yi Xian to refuse and turned to point to the right. 100 miles over there, there's an underground well with a seal on it. I want you to open this seal. No. In the distance, the true dragon roared. Shen Gong suddenly waved his right hand, and a water chain was thrown out. Boom! The true dragon's body split open, and blood splattered everywhere. Shen Gong looked at Yi Xian. Little brother, don't tell me you want to have the same treatment as him? Yi Xian said with a smile. No.
Shen Gong nodded. Then let's begin.
Human king. Yi Xian looked at Shen Gong. You're not human?
Shen Gong smiled. No.
Yi Xian nodded slightly. Understood. As he said this, he looked at Amu, and Amu shook his head. Yi Xian smiled. I hate it when people threaten me. As he said this, he was about to put Amu into the prison pagoda, but he found that he couldn't put him in at all. Yi Xian looked at Amu in shock. You, Amu blinked. If I don't want to, you can't put me in. Yi Xian was silent.
Amu walked in front of Yi Xian. I said, if there's anything, we'll face it together.
Yi Xian smiled. Then you'll support me.
Amu nodded. Okay.
As she said this, she opened her palm, and a skull appeared in her hand. Yi Xian blinked. What's this?
Amu smiled and said, go and fight.
Yi Xian nodded, and then he looked up at Shen Gong.
Shen Gong smiled. Isn't it good to be alive?
Yi Xian smiled. What I hate the most in my life is being threatened. And I believe that if I help you do something, you will never let us go. As he said this, he stomped his right foot on the ground. Wang! A sword's cry suddenly shook the world. In the air, Shen Gong's mouth curled into a disdainful smile. Human ants! As he said this, he suddenly held the strange trident in his hand and lightly pointed downwards. With this point, a pillar of water shot down from the sky. Facing this water pillar, Yi Xian didn't dare to be careless. He held the executing heaven sword in his hand and slashed upwards. Chi! This sword slashed directly on the water pillar, and the top of the water pillar was cut open. However, Yi Xian instantly fell to the ground. On the ground, Yi Xian glanced at his right hand. His right hand had already split open. In the sky, Shen Gong looked down at Yi Xian. You're not that weak. Yi Xian laughed, and the next moment, he soared into the sky again. Not far away, Amu placed the skull on the ground. She took out some strange things and placed them in front of the skull. Then, she clasped her hands together and silently chanted some unknown incantation. In the sky, Yi Xian was still fighting Shen Gong, but he was being completely suppressed. If it wasn't for the Tai Chi shield, he wouldn't be a match for Shen Gong at all. The gap in their strength was still too huge. However, Yi Xian became more and more courageous as the battle went on. Fight! Ever since his strength had increased, he rarely fought. Now, he wanted to have a good fight. As for Shen Gong, he frowned as he fought. Because he noticed that he wasn't able to easily kill Yi Xian. Tai Chi shield. Every time he exerted a killing move, Yi Xian would take out the Tai Chi shield to resist the killing move. Bang! Right at this moment, Yi Xian was suddenly blasted flying by a pillar of water again. This time, he flew for an entire 300 m. As soon as he stopped, the space around him suddenly split open, and then countless water chains flew out from the split space and surged towards him. Yi Xian didn't hesitate at all and directly withdrew the Tai Chi shield. Rumble! Rumble! For a time, waves of water exploded around Yi Xian. After a short moment, the water chains vanished, but Yi Xian was still there. Shen Gong stared fixedly at Yi Xian. What a Tai Chi shield! As soon as he finished speaking, he suddenly vanished on the spot. Hiss! A water chain shot out explosively like a thunderclap. In the distance, Yi Xian stood there without moving, and he allowed the water chain to blast against his Tai Chi shield. Rumble! The Tai Chi shield trembled violently. Even though the Tai Chi shield had resisted the force of the water pillar, the remaining force still forcefully blasted Yi Xian back by 300 m. Yi Xian hadn't even stopped when countless streams of water suddenly appeared around him. Meanwhile, the voice from the 9th floor resounded abruptly.
This is a body of water.
Domain. Yi Xian's expression changed when he heard this, because he noticed that he'd been suppressed. Without any hesitation, Yi Xian directly took out the God King's throne. At the instant he sat on it, a mysterious godly hell suddenly appeared in the surroundings. Bang! In an instant, the space that Yi Xian resided in collapsed from these two domains. On the other hand, Yi Xian's god domain forcefully blocked the body of water. Moreover, Yi Xian utilized the sword domain once more. Two domains. Rumble! The streams of water around Yi Xian suddenly vanished without a trace. In the distance, Shen Gong's eyes narrowed slightly. Two domains. Yi Xian looked at Shen Gong with lingering fear in his heart. If it wasn't for the God King's throne and the sword domain earlier, then he might have perished. Right at this moment, Shen Gong suddenly closed his eyes slowly. In the next moment, the entire sky suddenly turned into a river, and then countless water arrows covered the sky as they shot towards Yi Xian. Yi Xian's expression changed when he saw this, and he waved his right hand. The Tai Chi shield appeared in the sky. Rumble! In an instant, the entire Buzhou Divine Mountain trembled. There seemed to be no end to the water arrows in the sky. They were shooting at Yi Xian, who was on the ground. Even though the Tai Chi shield was able to block them, Yi Xian's face grew paler and paler. Yi Xian's expression turned ugly. He knew that Shen Gong was trying to exhaust him. Yi Xian turned to look at Amu below. At this moment, Amu was kneeling in front of the skull, chanting something.
The skull in front of her gradually trembled.
At this moment, Amu suddenly looked at Yi Xian.
Give me the Ares axe.
Yi Xian threw the Ares axe without hesitation. Amu grabbed the Ares axe.
She bit her finger and a drop of blood fell on the skull. Then she roared, "In the name of the sorcerer god, I summon your soul back."
Boom! The Ares axe shook violently, and the next moment, a headless figure was thrown down from the sky. P.S. I won't be asking for tickets anymore. How shameless. Chapter 1091. Seeing this, Yi Xian's eyelids twitched. Amu is calling for help. Whose soul is this? In the sky, Shen Gong's eyes fell on the headless body.
At this moment, his eyes were solemn.
Yi Xian appeared next to Amu.
He looked at the headless body and asked, "Who is this?"
Amu said softly, "The ancestor of the Guxing clan, Guxing." Guxing? Yi Xian said, "Isn't he from the Guxing clan?" Amu nodded slightly. Yi Xian asked again, "Will he help us?"
Amu smiled and said, "Yes."
Yi Xian still wanted to ask something, but at this moment, Guxing suddenly made a grabbing motion with his right hand, and the god of war axe directly turned into a ray of black light and appeared in his hand.
In the next moment, he fiercely swung the axe in the direction of the divine workmanship in the distance.
Chi! With this swing of the axe, the sky of Mount Buzhou instantly split open. In the distance, Shen Gong's expression changed. He narrowed his eyes, and a huge water shield suddenly appeared in front of him. The axe arrived, and the water shield instantly exploded. Shen Gong instantly retreated thousands of zhang away. At the sight of this, Yi Xian's expression instantly changed. The strength of this Guxing is a little too terrifying. In the distant sky, Shen Gong stared at the headless body. Who is it? The headless body did not waste any time. He raised the divine warrior axe and swung again. Chi! In an instant, the sky above Shen Gong's head exploded. Shen Gong's pupils constricted, and he stabbed forward with a strange trident in his right hand. Chi! Where the strange trident landed, the space split open, and countless streams of water gushed out. In an instant, the entire sky of Mount Buzhou was covered in water. At this moment, the divine warrior axe suddenly broke through the water and slashed at Shen Gong. Shen Gong's expression turned ferocious when he saw the axe coming. He stomped his right foot, and in an instant, the entire sky was covered by water. At the same time, a powerful force enveloped the entire Mount Buzhou. Water. Using water as a domain, forming a world of its own. The moment the water appeared, the Ares axe's attack slowed down. Suppress. The powerful water power directly suppressed the god of war axe. Seeing this, Amu's face darkened. Yi Xian blinked. Should we run? Amu said in a low voice. But what about the axe? If he takes it back, Gu Xing will not be a match for Shen Gong. Yi Xian looked at the sky. Gu Xing had been suppressed under the water. In the end, it was just a wisp of divine soul. As if he'd thought of something, Yi Xian suddenly shot into the sky. He didn't attack Shen Gong. Instead, he charged towards the dragon. He swung his sword swiftly, and the water chains that bound the dragon were severed by the executing heaven sword. After regaining its freedom, the dragon roared. Yi Xian pointed at Shen Gong in the distance. Go help him. The dragon glanced at Yi Xian, and then it transformed into a black ray of light and charged towards Shen Gong. As for Yi Xian, he charged over as well. He didn't intend to flee. He could flee now, but he couldn't flee in the future. If he fled now, Shen Gong might chase him out of Mount Buzhou. At that time, it would be even more troublesome. After all, this fellow's strength was too terrifying. With the addition of Yi Xian and the dragon, the situation of the battle was instantly reversed. Shen Gong was suppressed. Yi Xian barely made a move. He only used the Taiji shield at the critical moment to help the dragon and Gu Xing resist the fatal attacks. But this was enough. Because Shen Gong's strength was almost completely nullified by Yi Xian's Taiji shield. Shen Gong hated Yi Xian to the bone. But he couldn't do anything to Yi Xian. Gradually, Shen Gong was suppressed more and more, and in the end, he could only passively defend. Just like that, after fighting for about an hour, Shen Gong suddenly transformed into a stream of water and disappeared into the boundless horizon. Just like that, after fighting for about an hour, the divine craft suddenly turned into a stream of water and disappeared into the boundless horizon. Seeing this scene, Yi Xian was about to chase after him, but he was stopped by Amu. Amu looked at Yi Xian. Don't let it get to your head. Yi Xian was speechless. The dragon suddenly said angrily, if we don't kill him now, he will definitely become a disaster in the future. Amu did not speak. Instead, he looked at Gu Xing, who had completely turned illusory. Seeing this scene, the dragon, who had wanted to say something, immediately shut his mouth. Without Gu Xing, he and Yi Xian would not be a match for Shen Gong even if they joined forces. At this moment the dragon suddenly said, Human King, he will come again. Yi Xian was puzzled. Why? I don't have any deep hatred with him, right? The dragon sneered and did not speak. Yi Xian said solemnly, he told me about an underground well and wanted me to undo the seal there. Hearing this, the dragon's eyes narrowed slightly. Yi Xian looked at the dragon. What's in the underground well? The dragon did not speak. Yi Xian was expressionless. What else do you want to hide? The dragon still did not speak. Yi Xian said softly, if I'm not wrong, there must be many people like Shen Gong imprisoned there, right? The dragon suddenly said, he is not a human. He is a true god. A true god. Yi Xian looked at the dragon. How many more experts like him are there in the underground well? After a moment of silence the dragon said, 39. 39. Hearing this, Yi Xian's face sank. This Shen Gong's strength was so terrifying, and there were nearly 40 experts like him in the underground well. If all these experts came out, the world would really change. Amu suddenly said, they are all imprisoned by the Tendo? The dragon nodded. Yi Xian was puzzled. Why does the Tendo want to imprison them? The dragon said, because they are too powerful and ambitious. They are not bound by the heavens and earth, and pose a great threat to this universe. Yi Xian frowned. Then why not exterminate them? The dragon shook its head. It's not that simple. Those are all great gods that have been sealed. How can they be exterminated so easily? Amu suddenly said, they should be exterminated. Yi Xian looked at Amu. Amu said softly, they can definitely be exterminated. The reason why they are not exterminated is probably because of other reasons. Yi Xian shook his head. Those great gods will take revenge on her. Amu looked at Yi Xian. Do you think she will be afraid? Yi Xian shook his head. Probably not. Tendo had the strength to seal those great gods, so he must have the strength to exterminate them. Amu smiled. No matter what, this is not something we should worry about. Let's go. Yi Xian looked at the dragon. Come with us. The dragon frowned. What do you mean? Yi Xian said with a straight face. Think about it. Will Shen Gong let me off? The dragon looked at Yi Xian. That's your business. Yi Xian nodded. It's my business. Sigh. If he comes looking for me, I won't be able to defeat him. At that time, I will do whatever he wants me to do. After all, I can't defeat him. With that, he pulled a moo and left. At this moment, the dragon suddenly blocked the way. In front of Yi Xian, the dragon stared at Yi Xian. Stay here. Yi Xian smiled. Senior, are you joking? The dragon said in a deep voice. Stay here. It's safer. Yi Xian shook his head. I still have a lot of things to do. The dragon looked at Yi Xian and didn't say a word. Yi Xian smiled and said, Senior, you wouldn't be thinking of forcing me to stay here, right? If you are, then I'll have to call for help. Hearing this, the true dragon squinted his eyes. At this moment, he thought of the headless man from before. Yi Xian gazed at the dragon. Senior, to be honest, it's not safe for you to stay here. If you stay with me, we can take care of each other. What do you think? The dragon fell silent. Yi Xian continued. What if Shen Gong returns if I stay here? If you stay with me, we can take care of each other even if he returns. What do you think? The true dragon remained silent. Yi Xian smiled and didn't say anything else. He just pulled a moo along as he turned around and left. Right at this moment, the dragon spoke abruptly. Human, I'll go with you. Yi Xian turned around to look at the dragon. The dragon stared fixedly at him. You have to promise me that you won't open the seal for Shen Gong at any time. Yi Xian spoke solemnly. Senior, then I have to promise you as well. If I encounter any danger, then you must lend me a hand. You have no choice but to lend me a hand. The dragon fell silent. Yi Xian smiled. Are you unwilling? The dragon gazed at Yi Xian. So long as the enemy isn't the Tendo, then I'll definitely help anyone who attacks me. However, if Shen Gong attacks me or wants to open the seal, then you have to help me with all your strength. Yi Xian smiled. Deal. The dragon nodded slightly. Then with a shake of his body, he transformed into a finger-thin little dragon. He flew directly to Yi Xian's arm and wrapped around Yi Xian's arm. Yi Xian glanced at his arm, then looked at Amu. Amu grinned. Let's go. Yi Xian nodded. Just like that, Yi Xian brought Amu and left Buzhou Sacred Mountain. After Yi Xian, Amu, and the dragon left, Shen Gong suddenly appeared on the scene. He stared fixedly into the distance, his eyes filled with resentment. In the end, he didn't dare to make a move. Because his strength hadn't fully recovered. If he continued to fight like this, even if he won, he would be seriously injured. This was also the reason why he fled earlier. After all, his current strength wasn't even 50% of his peak. After a moment of silence, Shen Gong turned and left. Not long after, he arrived at a seal. On the seal, there was a small blood-red seal character. After a moment of silence, Shen Gong suddenly slapped the seal character. Boom! As soon as he made his move, a powerful force instantly blasted his body. He was directly pushed back thousands of feet by this force. After he stopped, his body directly became somewhat illusory. Shen Gong raised his head and looked at the position of the seal. At this moment, his eyes were filled with deep fear. After a moment of silence, Shen Gong slowly closed his eyes. I still have to find that young man. King of Man. King of Man could break any seal in the world. To break Tendo's seal, the only way was to find King of Man. After a long silence, Shen Gong suddenly disappeared on the spot. On the other side, a woman dressed in black was looking down at Yi Xian and Amu in the distance. Yi Xian didn't notice her. Amu, on the other hand, inadvertently glanced at the direction of the woman in black. Chapter 1092. Amu brought Yi Xian back to the dimension of nothingness once again. Once they returned to the dimension of nothingness, an old man suddenly appeared in front of them. The old man bowed respectfully to Amu. Great priest. Yi Xian looked at Amu. Amu smiled and said, Allow me to introduce you. This is Elder Wu Shi of the Wu clan. Yi Xian looked at the old man called Wu Shi and nodded slightly. Wu Shi looked at Yi Xian and said, "Great priest, this is?" Amu smiled and said, "He is my shaman's servant." Wu Shi was stunned when he heard this. Amu blinked. "Is there a problem?" Wu Shi looked at Yi Xian and carefully sized up Yi Xian. Then he frowned slightly. "Great priest," Amu suddenly said, "is there a problem?" Wu Shi's expression changed when he heard this. He quickly said, "No problem." Amu nodded. "It's good that there is no problem. Let's return to the Wu clan." Wu Shi quickly stepped aside. Amu led Yi Xian into the distance. On the way, Yi Xian suddenly asked, "He doesn't seem to like me being your shaman's servant?" Amu looked at Yi Xian and smiled. "As long as I like it." Yi Xian nodded. He did not really care about what the other members of the Wu clan thought. Amu looked at Wu Shi. "Only you woke up?" Wu Shi shook his head. "Some of the clan members have already woken up. They are waiting for the great priest in Shaman City." Amu nodded slightly. "I understand." Soon, Amu brought Yi Xian to Shaman City. Right when he entered Shaman City, a group of powerful berserkers from the Wu clan quickly surrounded him. When these powerful berserkers from the Wu clan saw Amu, their expressions became incredibly excited. All the powerful berserkers from the Wu clan quickly bowed towards Amu respectfully and said together, "Greetings, great priest." Amu nodded slightly. No need for formalities. As she spoke, she looked at Wu Shi. "Pass down my order. If anyone from the Wu clan wakes up, come to this city. Without my order, no one from the Wu clan is allowed to leave this city." Wu Shi bowed respectfully. "Understood." After that, he glanced at Yi Xian, and then he left quietly. Amu led Yi Xian forward. Along the way, Yi Xian found that these Wu clan experts really respected Amu. Respect that came from the bottom of their hearts. Amu's position in the Wu clan was even higher than he had imagined. Amu brought Yi Xian to a tower with a seal. She formed a seal with her hands and chanted an incantation. After a moment, the tower started trembling, and soon, the door to the tower was suddenly opened. The moment the door was opened, a rich wave of spirit aura instantly spilled out. Yi Xian looked at Amu. Amu smiled and said, "This is the place where the Wu clan keeps our treasures. Call that little guy out." Yi Xian nodded, then quickly summoned his heaven-battling beast. Xiaoling also came out. Amu looked at Xiaoling and smiled. "Bring it in to eat. Eat as much as you want." Xiaoling blinked. "Big sister, it can eat a lot." Amu smiled. "It doesn't matter." Xiaoling turned to look at Yi Xian, while Yi Xian looked at Amu. "Are you really going to let it eat like this?" Amu smiled faintly. "I also have my own selfish motives. These treasures are just worldly possessions. If we can exchange these worldly possessions for a powerful demonic beast, we will have made a profit. What do you think?" Yi Xian smiled. "I hope so." With that, he gently touched Xiaoling's little head. "Bring it in to eat." After getting Yi Xian's consent, Xiaoling did not hesitate anymore. She directly carried the heaven-battling beast and rushed in. Outside the tower, Yi Xian looked at the tower and asked softly, "Is the heaven-battling beast very strong?" Amu shook her head. "It wasn't very strong at first." Yi Xian looked at Amu. Amu said softly, "Its original limit, which is its ancestor, should be at the level of the 7 groups of spiritual beings. But it's different." Yi Xian said in a low voice, "You mean, it has become different after being cultivated by Xiaoling and the little white guy?" Amu nodded. "It's very different. Its bloodline has already surpassed its ancestors. With the help of the little white guy, I don't know to what extent it will grow. But it doesn't matter. We will find out soon." Yi Xian asked, "What if it still isn't strong after eating those treasures of the Wu clan?" Amu blinked. "So what?" Yi Xian shook his head. "Amu, aren't you afraid that the Wu clan will blame you?" Amu said softly, "Do you know why the Wu clan all revere me?" Yi Xian was silent for a moment. "Everything you do is for the Wu clan, right?" Amu looked at Yi Xian. "You are really smart." Yi Xian asked again, "You chose me for the Wu clan, right?" Amu nodded.
I have never hidden this from you.
Yi Xian smiled. You chose me mainly because of the people behind me? Amu shook his head. That's not it. I chose you mainly because of you. Yi Xian frowned. What do you mean? Amu looked at Yi Xian.
Because you are a good person.
Yi Xian blinked. Are you sure you chose me because of this? Amu smiled.
If you were a bad person, I wouldn't dare to bet myself and the future of the Wu clan on you. You are different from many people.
You have no ambition. You have no desire for power. You are not interested in longevity. And you are true to your friends. You don't do things against your heart. I can rest assured being friends with you. The Wu clan can rest assured too. It's that simple. Yi Xian was silent. Amu said again, don't think that you got to where you are today because of the people behind you. Some things are inborn. We can't change it. Your identity.
Speaking of this, she paused and then giggled.
Your identity is indeed powerful. You are a powerful second generation who can't be choosy. Hee. Yi Xian was speechless.
Weren't you going to comfort me?
Amu blinked.
Because I suddenly realized that you don't need to be comforted at all.
Yi Xian smiled bitterly. Actually, I still don't know who the people behind me are. I don't know anything about them. Amu said softly, don't think too much. Just be yourself. Yi Xian looked at Amu. If there was no woman in plain dress, you wouldn't have chosen me, right? Amu looked at Yi Xian for a moment and said softly, when the war sky beast comes out, I will take you to a place. Yi Xian smiled.
You haven't answered my question.
Amu looked at Yi Xian.
I am a little disappointed in you.
Yi Xian was puzzled.
Why?
Amu shook her head. When the war sky beast comes out, I will take you to a place. At that time, you can leave or stay. It's up to you.
Yi Xian said in a deep voice, I didn't say I want to leave.
Amu shook her head again and didn't say anything. But Yi Xian understood what she meant. Just like that, the two of them stood quietly in front of the attic. During this time, Amu didn't say anything. Yi Xian didn't say anything either. About 2 days later, a powerful aura suddenly came out from the attic. At this moment, the gazes of the Wu clan's experts were attracted. Yi Xian looked at the attic. Xiaoling suddenly ran out. She ran to Yi Xian and said excitedly, It's full.
Yi Xian asked, and then? Little Ling blinked and then she said, and then it grew bigger.
Yi Xian was about to speak when the attic suddenly collapsed. Then, a huge demon beast appeared in front of Yi Xian. A heaven-warring beast. In terms of size, this heaven-warring beast was as tall as a mountain. Its arms were like pillars that could hold up the sky, and it emanated an extremely powerful aura. At this moment, the true dragon on Yi Xian's arm opened its eyes. It glanced at the heaven-warring beast, and the heaven-warring beast looked back at it with a strong will to fight. Amu suddenly looked at Xiaoling and said, Make it smaller. Xiaoling nodded, and then she looked at the heaven-warring beast and said, Make it smaller. The heaven-warring beast didn't hesitate at all, and it silently changed back to its original appearance. It didn't dare show the slightest bit of disrespect to Xiaoling. After all, she was the one who fed it. Moreover, there was still the little white fellow. It was both respectful and fearful of the little white fellow. In any case, both Xiaoling and the little white fellow were important to it, so it had to hold on tightly to them. Amu suddenly said, its current level should be at the level of the 9 groups of divine beings. Yi Xian was a little shocked. It's even stronger than the 8 groups of divine beings? Amu glanced at Yi Xian. Don't underestimate that little white fellow. Her ability is unique in this world. Yi Xian fell silent. 9 groups of divine beings. In other words, the heaven-warring beast's combat strength far exceeded the heavenly dragon race's 8 groups of divine beings. It should be able to fight the true dragon head-on. Amu continued, the heaven-warring beast's bloodline has a special characteristic. It gets stronger the more it fights. Therefore, although it's a 9 groups of divine beings, it's enough to fight the true dragon. At this moment, the true dragon on Yi Xian's arm suddenly opened its eyes, and Amu added, of course if the true dragon is at its peak, it's also very powerful. The true dragon looked at Amu and didn't say a word. Amu smiled and didn't say anything else to the true dragon. Actually,
After the heaven-warring beast received the help of that little white fellow, its bloodline was already not inferior to the true dragon.
However, she also knew that the true dragon race was extremely arrogant. They didn't even care about other demonic beasts.
Amu recollected her thoughts and looked at Yi Xian. "Let's go."
With that, she turned and left. Yi Xian was silent for a moment before he followed Amu. Amu led Yi Xian forward. Along the way, she didn't say a word.
Yi Xian glanced at Amu. Angry? Amu was expressionless. Just a little disappointed.
Yi Xian was a little puzzled and asked, "What are you disappointed about?"
Amu stopped in her tracks and turned to look at Yi Xian. "My witch's servant can have no powerful abilities, but he must be confident.
Do you know what confidence is?" Yi Xian was silent. Amu said again, "Confidence, why don't you have confidence?
Is it because of the plain-dressed girl?
Do you know that I have understood you?
When you were in your small world, Qing City, you had no backing, no treasures, no fortuitous encounters, but you had confidence, you had pride, you had an unyielding heart.
Do you know what is called a true heart? Nature? Why are you stronger now? You have more treasures, but your confidence is getting less and less?"
With that, she suddenly took Yi Xian's executing heaven sword.
"Do you know why your sword is worse than arrows?
Because your sword doesn't have that kind of strong confidence."
What can a person without confidence do?
He can't do anything well. If a man doesn't have confidence, can he still be called a man?
Chapter 1093. Confidence. On the spot, Yi Xian was silent.
Ching ching.
At that time, he was just an ordinary person, but for his sister, he had to become the heir of the family. Because that was the only way for him and his sister to survive. Survive. Actually, at that time, it wasn't a matter of confidence, but a matter of life and death.
Of course, at that time he was indeed confident.
At that time, he felt that as long as he worked hard, there was nothing he couldn't do. At that time, he didn't think of relying on anyone, because there was no one for him to rely on, he could only rely on himself. At that time, he didn't have the heart to rely on, because there was no one for him to rely on. It was also at that time, his heart was as firm as a rock. Later on, he met many people, and the person who influenced him the most was the plain-dressed woman. The plain-dressed woman changed him too much. And until now, it was undeniable that he was still alive because of the plain-dressed woman, and many people helped him, including Xiao Dao and the legendary Tendo, definitely not because of him, Yi Xian. Although he was very strong now, in the eyes of the Tendo and Xiao Dao, it was far from enough. And to be able to obtain the human king's inheritance, it was mostly because of the karma he had. Confidence? Yi Xian shook his head and sighed. "My path is a little crooked." Amu looked at Yi Xian. "It's not crooked, it's that you've lost your confidence in your nature."
Yi Xian looked at Amu, and Amu said softly, "You feel that everything you have now is because of the plain-dressed woman.
You even feel that without her, you wouldn't have been able to live until now, right?" Yi Xian asked back. "Isn't that so?"
Amu nodded. "You're right, it's indeed like that. Without her, you definitely wouldn't have been able to live until now."
Yi Xian.
Amu said again, "But you've forgotten one thing, the reason why you have so many hardships is not unrelated to her."
Yi Xian was a little confused. "What do you mean?"
Amu said softly, "There are many things that are very complicated.
I can't explain it to you clearly. I can only tell you things that you can understand. Your fate, your future, has been decided by someone else." Yi Xian's pupils shrank. "What do you mean?"
Amu looked at Yi Xian. "Let me tell you, the reason why that plainly dressed woman behind you isn't coming up is definitely because she's helping you block something.
She wanted you to escape from some fate. If it wasn't for her, I believe that you would be living a different life right now. You would be living according to the path that someone else had planned for you."
Yi Xian said solemnly, "Amu, what you're saying is a little too incredible."
Amu shook his head.
"Your life is 100 times more mysterious than what I've described."
Yi Xian asked, "Who controls my fate?" Amu looked straight at Yi Xian.
"You."
Yi Xian frowned slightly. "What do you mean?"
Amu pointed at Yi Xian's chest.
"You're scheming against yourself. It's also because of this that the plainly dressed woman can't cut off the karma of your previous life.
Because she doesn't dare to.
If she were to cut it off, she would cut you off as well. Therefore what she wants to do is to change
to change the trajectory of your fate. And you have to understand that for her, it's much easier to destroy than to change.
But she can't destroy.
Yi Xian said solemnly. You're saying that my previous life is scheming against my current life.
Amu shook his head.
No. It's far more than that.
Yi Xian frowned.
Qing, Yi family, ancestral shrine. Ancestors above, Yi Xian has no talent, no virtue. From now on, Yi Xian's position as the heir is removed and Yi Lang will inherit it. The one who spoke was an old man in a black robe. Not far behind the old man, stood a youth with a faint smile on his face. This person was Yi Lang. On both sides were the Yi family's elders.
Why?
At this time, a timid voice suddenly rang out in the ancestral shrine. Everyone looked over and saw a little girl standing at the door. She was about 12 or 13 years old, her hands tightly gripping the hem of her skirt. Her face had a sickly pallor, and she looked a little weak. There was even a trace of fear in her eyes. This little girl was called Yi Ling, Yi Xian's younger sister. When she heard that the family wanted to remove Yi Xian, she disregarded her illness and rushed over. The black-robed old man frowned.
Yi Ling, what are you doing?
The little girl called Yi Ling bowed to the people in the ancestral shrine and said timidly, Great Elder, my brother Yi Xian is the heir.
Why did you cripple him for no reason?
The Great Elder looked coldly at Yi Ling. This is a family matter.
What are you interrupting for? Leave.
Yi Ling was clearly a little fearful. She did not dare to look the Great Elder in the eye, but she did not leave. Instead, she mustered up her courage and walked into the ancestral hall. She bowed to the elders on both sides of the hall and said, Elders, my brother is currently fighting with the Li family for the mining rights of the mine in Nanshan. He is now fighting for the family, and it is unknown whether he is alive or dead. However, the family has used a groundless excuse to remove his position as the crown prince. This is truly unfair.
Impudent.
The Great Elder suddenly raged. Whether he's stripped or not, it's not up to a little girl like you to decide.
Men, drag her away.
At this time the new heir, Yi Lang, suddenly laughed. He should be flogged 30 times as a warning to others. The Great Elder replied coldly. Then flog him 30 times.
Very quickly, 2 Yi family's guards rushed in.
Yi Ling clenched her fists and said angrily, This is unfair. My brother has risked his life for the family for so many years.
Even now, he's fighting for the family.
The family is unfair to him. One of the guards glanced at the new heir, Yi Lang. He knew that this was his chance to shine. The guard sneered. Young Master Yi Lang inherits the title of heir.
What are you yelling about? As he spoke, he raised his hand and slapped Yi Ling's face. Slap. A crisp slap sounded. Yi Ling's right cheek instantly turned red and swollen. However, she did not cry. She just covered her cheek tightly.
Yi Lang looked at the guard and smiled. What's your name? The guard quickly bowed. Subordinate Zhang Mu greets the crown prince. Yi Lang nodded. You're not bad. After I become the crown prince, I'll need 10 personal guards. You can be my personal guard from now on.
Hearing this, Zhang Mu was overjoyed.
He quickly bowed deeply. I'll go through fire and water for the crown prince.
I'll do anything for you.
Yi Lang nodded. Drag him away. This person is causing trouble in the ancestral hall.
Don't hold back. Understood?
Zhang Mu glanced at Yi Lang. When he saw the murderous intent in Yi Lang's eyes, he understood. He immediately grabbed Yi Ling's hair and dragged her out. At this moment, Zhang Mu suddenly stopped as if he had seen something. In the ancestral hall, everyone turned their heads to look outside. Not far from the ancestral hall, a young man was walking towards the ancestral hall. The young man wore a tight-fitting robe that was tattered and covered in blood. The young man was Yi Xian, who had rushed back from Nanshan. Seeing Yi Xian, Yi Lang's mouth curled into a cold smile. In the ancestral hall, the elders frowned. The Great Elder narrowed his eyes. His face was dark and gloomy. No one knew what he was thinking. From afar, when Yi Xian saw Zhang Mu dragging Yi Ling, his face turned savage. Who gave you the guts to touch my sister? When Zhang Mu saw Yi Xian, his face changed. He quickly looked at Yi Lang and was about to speak. At this moment, Yi Xian leaped in front of him like a ferocious tiger. Before the latter could react, Yi Xian's fist landed on his face. Pang! Zhang Mu felt dizzy,
and he stumbled and fell. Yi Lang did not stop there. He charged at Zhang Mu again. At this time, Yi Lang suddenly roared, "Yi Xian, he's my man. How dare you?" Yi Xian suddenly stepped on Zhang Mu's chest. Puh! Zhang Mu spat out a mouthful of blood. Seeing this, Yi Lang's face turned ugly. Yi Xian lifted his head to look at him, asking savagely, "Your man?" As he spoke, he stomped on Zhang Mu's face. Zhang Mu's face turned into a bloody mess as he screamed, "Prince, save me!" Yi Xian did not care about Zhang Mu as he walked to Yi Ling's side. Seeing Yi Ling's state, Yi Xian felt as though his heart was being sliced apart. He clenched his fists, and his entire body trembled. When Yi Ling saw Yi Xian, her tears flowed. "Brother, it hurts, it hurts." Hearing this, Yi Xian's expression turned savage. In the next instant, he charged in front of Zhang Mu and kicked Zhang Mu's head. Pang! Ching Ching! Yi Clan. Ancestral Hall. Ancestors, Yi Xian has no talent, no virtue. From now on, Yi Xian's position as prince shall be replaced by Yi Lang. The one who spoke was an old man in black robes. Not far behind the old man, there was a youth with a faint smile on his face. This person was Yi Lang. On both sides, there were the Yi clan elders. Why? Right at this moment, a slightly timid voice suddenly resounded within the ancestral hall. Everyone turned to look and saw a little girl standing at the door. She was about 12 or 13 years old, and her hands were tightly gripping the hem of her skirt. Her face had a sickly pallor, and she looked a little weak. There was even a trace of fear in her eyes. This girl was called Yi Ling, and she was Yi Xian's younger sister. When she heard that the clan wanted to remove Yi Xian, she disregarded her illness and rushed over. The black-robed old man frowned. "Yi Ling, what are you doing?" The girl called Yi Ling bowed to everyone in the hall, as she asked timidly, "Great Elder, my brother, Yi Xian, is the prince. Why did you cripple him for no reason?" The Great Elder looked at Yi Ling coldly. "This is a matter of the clan. Why are you butting in? Leave." Yi Ling was clearly a little fearful. She did not dare to look the Great Elder in the eye, but she did not leave. Instead, she mustered up her courage and walked into the ancestral hall. She bowed to the elders on both sides of the hall and said, "Elders, my brother is currently fighting with the Li family for the mining rights of the mine in Nanshan. He is now fighting for the family, and it is unknown whether he is alive or dead. However, the family has used a groundless excuse to remove his position as the crown prince." Impudent! The Great Elder suddenly raged. "Whether he's stripped or not, it's not up to a little girl like you to decide. Men, drag her away." At this time the new prince Yi Lang suddenly laughed. "He should be flogged 30 times, as a warning to others." The Great Elder replied coldly, "Then flog him 30 times. Very quickly, 2 Yi clan guards rushed in. Yi Ling clenched her fists and said angrily, "This is unfair. My brother has risked his life for the clan for so many years, and even now, he's fighting for the clan. The clan is unfair to him." One of the guards glanced at the new prince, Yi Lang. He knew that this was his chance to shine. The guard sneered, "Young Master Yi Lang inherits the position of prince. What are you shouting for?" As he spoke, he raised his hand and slapped Yi Ling's face. Slap! A crisp slap sounded, and the right side of Yi Ling's face instantly turned red and swollen. However, she did not cry, and only held her cheek tightly. Yi Lang looked at the guard and smiled. "What's your name?" The guard hurriedly bowed. "Subordinate Zhang Mu greets the prince." Yi Lang nodded. "You're not bad. After I become the prince, I'll need 10 guards. From now on, you'll be my guard." Hearing this, Zhang Mu was overjoyed and hurriedly bowed deeply. "I'll go through fire and water for the prince, and I'll do anything for you." Yi Lang nodded. "Drag him away. This person is causing trouble in the ancestral hall. Don't hold back, understand?" Zhang Mu glanced at Yi Lang, and when he saw the murderous intent in Yi Lang's eyes, he understood. He immediately grabbed Yi Ling's hair and dragged her out. At this moment, Zhang Mu seemed to have seen something, and suddenly stopped. In the ancestral hall, everyone turned their heads to look outside. Not far from the ancestral hall, a young man was walking towards the ancestral hall. The young man was wearing a tight-fitting robe, and the robe was tattered, and there was blood everywhere. The young man was Yi Xian, who had rushed back from Nanshan. Seeing Yi Xian, Yi Lang's mouth curled into a cold smile. In the ancestral hall, the elders frowned. The great elder narrowed his eyes, and his face was dark. No one knew what he was thinking. From afar, when Yi Xian saw Zhang Mu dragging Yi Ling, his face turned savage. Who gave you the guts to touch my sister? When Zhang Mu saw Yi Xian, his face changed. He hurriedly looked at Yi Lang, and was about to speak. At this time, Yi Xian was like a ferocious tiger, and before the latter could react, Yi Xian's fist landed on his face. Pang! Zhang Mu felt a wave of dizziness, and he stumbled and fell. However, Yi Ling did not stop there, and rushed towards Zhang Mu again. At this time, Yi Lang suddenly roared, Yi Xian, he's my man, how dare you? Yi Xian suddenly stepped on Zhang Mu's chest. Puh! Zhang Mu spat out a mouthful of blood. Seeing this, Yi Lang's face turned ugly, while Yi Xian lifted his head to look at him, asking savagely, your man? As he spoke, he stomped down on Zhang Mu's face. Zhang Mu's face turned into a bloody mess as he screamed, Prince, save me! Yi Xian did not care about Zhang Mu as he walked to Yi Ling's side. Seeing Yi Ling's state, Yi Xian felt as though his heart was being sliced by a knife. He clenched his fists, and his entire body trembled. When Yi Ling saw Yi Xian, her tears flowed. Brother, it hurts, it hurts. Hearing this, Yi Xian's expression turned savage. In the next instant, he charged in front of Zhang Mu, and kicked Zhang Mu's head. Pang! Chapter 1094. Yi Xian wanted to ask more, but Amu shook her head. I can't see through anything else. She quickened her pace after saying that. Yi Xian hurriedly followed. Amu! Amu turned to look at Yi Xian. Don't ask anything, don't say anything, just follow me. She walked into the distance after saying that. Yi Xian hesitated for a moment, then followed. Soon, Amu brought Yi Xian to a tavern in the city. The tavern's business was quite good. Seeing Amu's arrival, some Wu clan members hurriedly walked to Amu and bowed respectfully. Greetings, High Priest. Yi Xian found that there was only one person who did not bow, the owner of the tavern. The owner of the tavern was a middle-aged man, wearing a simple gray robe with a piece of black cloth tied to his chest, kneading dough. Amu looked at the Wu clan powerhouses in front of her and said softly, Everyone please rise. The Wu clan powerhouses stood up one after another. Amu bowed slightly to everyone and said, Please leave for a moment, I have something to deal with here. Hearing this, the Wu clan powerhouses hurriedly bowed back and quietly retreated. Amu walked to the middle-aged man and bowed slightly. Uncle Jiang. The middle-aged man nodded slightly, then glanced at Yi Xian. You chose. Amu nodded. Yes. The middle-aged man nodded. You chose, of course, it's not wrong. Amu said, I want to ask Uncle Jiang for a favor. The middle-aged man said, Speak. Amu said, Open the Wu clan's path to purgatory and let him in. Hearing this, the middle-aged man frowned. Are you sure? Amu nodded. The middle-aged man said in a deep voice, This is not a joke. Amu smiled. I'm serious too. The middle-aged man said, Does he know? Amu turned to look at Yi Xian. The Wu clan's path of purgatory is a trial for our Wu clan. If you want to become the high priest, you must pass through this path. Yi Xian said in a deep voice, You want me to take this path? Amu nodded. Yes. But you can refuse. Yi Xian asked, What if I refuse? Amu smiled and said, Then please leave. I will use witchcraft to cut off the karmic connection between me and you. We will never cross paths again. Yi Xian looked at Amu. Amu had a smile on her face, but he knew that she was serious. After a moment of silence, Yi Xian said, I'll go in. Amu looked at Yi Xian. Yi Xian chuckled and said, I know that you're not doing this for yourself, but for me. Amu turned around, not letting Yi Xian see her expression. Let me tell you, after you go in, your cultivation will be sealed. I will also use a secret technique to break your indestructible golden body and turn you into a real ordinary person. Yi Xian frowned slightly. You can break my indestructible golden body? Amu nodded. Yes. Yi Xian looked at Amu. Amu said softly, Don't underestimate the high priest. I know a lot. As long as I want to, I can break your Tai Chi shield and your indestructible body. Yi Xian was silent. Amu said again, After you go in, you will be a real ordinary person. But don't worry, you can give up at any time. Yi Xian asked, Did you want me to go in from the beginning, or did you only think about it now? Amu said softly. At the beginning, I didn't think it was necessary for you. But now, I realize that you are very necessary. Yi Xian smiled and said, I'll go in. Amu said, Are you sure? Yi Xian nodded. Amu asked, Why do you want to go in? Yi Xian said, For you and for me. Amu was silent for a moment, then looked at the middle-aged man. Uncle Jiang. The middle-aged man shook his head. Lass, he can't. Yi Xian looked at the middle-aged man. Uncle, don't look down on me like that. Uncle Jiang glanced at Yi Xian. Kid, after you go in, you will regret it. Yi Xian said, If I don't go in, I will regret it in the future. Uncle Jiang looked at Amu, and Amu nodded. Open it. Uncle Jiang sighed softly. Then, he opened his palm, and a cloud of black gas floated out. Soon, that cloud of black gas formed a pitch-black black hole. At this moment, countless experts of the sorcerer tribe suddenly rushed over. The Wu clan's path of purgatory. This path could be said to be terrifying in the Wu clan, because it was even more terrifying than purgatory. In the history of the Wu clan, there had only been 3 high priests. In other words, in the entire history of the Wu clan, only 3 people had walked this path. Now that the Wu clan's path of purgatory had opened, it meant that someone was going to walk the path of purgatory. When everyone saw Yi Xian, someone suddenly said in surprise, Isn't that the high priest's shaman servant? Shaman servant. Everyone looked at Yi Xian with rather strange expressions. In history, besides Amu, the other 2 shaman servants of the high priest were super experts. Regarding Yi Xian, the experts of the Wu clan didn't think too much about it, because he was chosen by Amu. In front of the tavern, Amu looked at Yi Xian. She slowly closed her eyes, and a moment later, she suddenly pointed a finger at Yi Xian's chest. Essence restoration. Boom. In an instant, Yi Xian's body trembled violently. The next moment, his face turned pale at a speed visible to the naked eye, and his entire aura disappeared without a trace in an instant. Not only that, but his physical body actually transformed layer by layer at this moment. Not long after, Yi Xian's entire body actually collapsed to the ground. Weakness. At this moment, Yi Xian felt extremely weak, as if all the energy in his body had been sucked out. At this moment, Amu pointed another finger at Yi Xian's chest. Place of the outer fringe. Boom. A ray of black light suddenly entered Yi Xian's body. Yi Xian's eyes widened, and in an instant, his realm was sealed at this moment. His physical body, his realm, everything was sealed. At this moment, he truly became a normal person. And that was not the end. Amu gently hooked her right hand, and the World Prison Pagoda directly flew out from Yi Xian's body. Not only the World Prison Pagoda, but also all the treasures on Yi Xian's body were taken away by Amu at this moment. Amu squatted down, and she looked at Yi Xian. Remember my words well. In life, there are very few people who can stick to their original hearts and not forget their original intentions. Why is that? Because living is a kind of cultivation. On this path of cultivation, we will encounter many problems, and also many temptations. It is easy for people to lose themselves. With that, she paused and then said, It is difficult to persevere, but it is very easy to give up. With that, she looked at Uncle Jiang. The latter hesitated for a moment, and then waved his right hand, and Yi Xian, who was lying on the ground, disappeared. On the spot, Amu stood up and did not say a word. Uncle Jiang looked at Amu. He won't be able to hold on. Amu said softly. He can. Uncle Jiang shook his head. Girl, you know that without great perseverance and determination, it is impossible for one to survive that purgatory. Amu looked at the black hole in front of her and said softly, He can definitely. Uncle Jiang asked, What if he can't? Amu slowly closed her eyes. Then I will dig out my eyes. Uncle Jiang's expression instantly changed. After an unknown period of time, Yi Xian opened his eyes. When he opened his eyes, he was in an endless desert. Just as Yi Xian wanted to stand up, he realized that he was weak. No, after losing his original powerful strength, he was no longer used to being powerless. Yi Xian shook his head and smiled. He slowly got up, and then looked into the distance. At the end of the distance, there was a desert, and he could not see the end. No. It was because his divine sense had disappeared, and he could only see what ordinary people could see. He had really lost all his strength. At this moment, there was a sudden change. A black shadow suddenly flew out from the sand beside him. Yi Xian's expression changed, and he instinctively pointed with his finger. However, this time, there was no sword light at the tip of his finger. When he came to his senses, his entire right arm was torn off from his shoulder. Ah! Yi Xian was shocked, and he forced himself to roll back. The sand was instantly dyed red with blood. Yi Xian looked up. Not far in front of him, there was a red scorpion the size of an adult man chewing on his right arm. At this moment, cold sweat flowed down Yi Xian's forehead. Because he knew that Amu was not joking with him. If he was not careful, he would really die. And just now, because of his own carelessness, his right arm was gone. Without thinking too much, Yi Xian took off his clothes and wrapped his mouth and left hand around the wound on his right shoulder. If he did not wrap this wound in time, he would bleed to death. At this moment, the red scorpion had finished chewing his arm. The scorpion stared at him, as if he was an object in its mouth. Yi Xian glanced in front of him. There was nothing in front of him, no external objects that could be used. What should I do? At this moment, he actually panicked a little. Because he was used to all kinds of divine objects and a strong body, he actually panicked in the face of such danger. Right at this moment, the red scorpion suddenly leaped and pounced at him. If it was in the outside world, then he would be able to kill such trash with a single glance. But at this moment, the red scorpion was like a god of death that was swinging its scythe. It was the smell of death. At this critical moment, Yi Xian suddenly roared furiously. He suddenly grabbed a handful of sand with his left hand and tossed it at the red scorpion's head. The red scorpion was caught off guard, and it closed its eyes instinctively. Meanwhile, Yi Xian suddenly leaped forward. Right at this moment, the red scorpion suddenly bit at him instinctively. Yi Xian's expression changed. He bent his body and smashed his left fist against the scorpion's crotch. Crack! The sound of an egg shattering resounded abruptly. The red scorpion's eyes suddenly opened wide while its entire body stiffened. Its expression was even more horrifying than a human's. Meanwhile, Yi Xian seized the opportunity to smash his fist against the scorpion's throat. Bang! The red scorpion instantly stopped breathing. On the other hand, Yi Xian sat weakly on the ground. He wasn't like before, and coupled with the fact that his right arm had been torn off, he was extremely weak right now. However, Yi Xian didn't dare rest because he didn't know if there was any danger in the surroundings. In the desert, danger came from the sand beneath one's feet. Yi Xian hurriedly stood up. He glanced vigilantly at the surroundings, and then he wanted to leave and find a safe place. However, he seemed to have thought of something and suddenly looked at the red scorpion. There was nothing to eat in this boundless desert. How would I replenish my strength if I don't eat? When he thought up to here, Yi Xian walked towards the red scorpion. Chapter 1095. It didn't take long for Yi Xian to dissect the red scorpion. However, he noticed a huge problem, and that was fire. Where can I get fire? At this moment, Yi Xian suddenly felt that everything was very difficult. At this moment, he felt like he'd returned to the time when he was in Qing City. Qing City. Yi Xian couldn't help but smile bitterly when he thought of that time. His life back then was really too bitter. In order to bring benefits to his family, he usually had to fight with other families deep in the mountains for a few days and nights. When he thought of this, Yi Xian suddenly laughed. Isn't it just a lack of cultivation? Isn't it just a lack of external objects? Could it be that I'll become a cripple if I don't have these things? When he thought of this, Yi Xian suddenly felt full of fighting spirit. He ate the scorpion raw. The scorpion meat was slightly sour and bitter, but he had to eat it in order to fill his stomach and replenish his strength. Staying alive was more important than anything else. A moment later, Yi Xian felt that he'd recovered some strength. He glanced at the surroundings, and it was a vast desert. He had to think of a way to leave this place. Yi Xian tied a piece of scorpion meat, wrapped it with a piece of cloth, and tied it around his waist. After that, he walked towards the distance. At this moment, a scorching sun suddenly appeared in the sky. Yi Xian's expression instantly changed when he saw this scene. Water. I must have water. Based on his current condition, he could hold on for 3 days at most. If there was no water after 3 days, he would die. Moreover, the scorpion meat on his body could only last him for 2 days. Time was pressing. Yi Xian's expression was gloomy as he walked towards the distance. Along the way, Yi Xian had a vigilant expression on his face, and he didn't dare be careless at all. In his left hand was a sharp scorpion tail that he'd chopped off from the scorpion. And now, this was his weapon. After walking for around 2 hours, Yi Xian suddenly stopped. Because there was still a desert in the distance. Yi Xian fell into deep thought as he stood on the spot. Walking like this wasn't going to work. Not only would it exhaust his stamina, but it would also be easy for him to walk deeper and deeper. After pondering for a moment, Yi Xian suddenly took off the scorpion meat from his waist. He opened the cloth and placed the scorpion meat in front of him. Then, he walked to the side and let his body dive into the sand, leaving only his head exposed. Then, he calmed his qi and concentrated. Wait. Yi Xian waited motionlessly. After about 2 hours, there was a sudden movement in the sand in the distance. Yi Xian narrowed his eyes and stared at the scorpion meat. At this moment, a giant python broke out of the sand and bit the scorpion meat. Almost at the same time, Yi Xian suddenly broke out of the sand and rushed directly in front of the giant python. With a wave of his left hand, a handful of sand flew towards the giant python. The giant python subconsciously closed its eyes. However, its reaction was also extremely fast. It swung its tail and directly wrapped around Yi Xian. Yi Xian suddenly felt suffocated. At this moment, Yi Xian stabbed the scorpion tail into the giant python's vital spot. Snake blood splattered. The giant python raised its head and roared. Its tail loosened, and Yi Xian took advantage of the momentum and punched the giant python's vital spot. Boom! The giant python trembled. Yi Xian punched again. This time, the giant python immediately let out a mournful hiss. Just like that, he hurriedly punched it countless times. Gradually, the giant python stopped struggling and was on the verge of death. Yi Xian stopped and lay on the giant python's body. He had used all his strength just now. However, he didn't dare to rest. He got up and walked in front of the giant python. The giant python opened its eyes and looked at him. Yi Xian sized up the giant python. The giant python's body cultivation wasn't particularly large. It was about the same size as an ordinary human. Of course, it was much longer than an ordinary human. Yi Xian looked at the giant python. Can you understand human language? The giant python just looked at Yi Xian. Yi Xian shook his head. Needless to say, this guy was too low level and definitely didn't have any intelligence. Without intelligence, it could be subdued, but it definitely wouldn't be a matter of a day or two. After a moment of silence, Yi Xian looked at his left hand. At this moment, he thought of his blood. Bloodline power. Was his bloodline power sealed as well? Yi Xian hesitated for a moment, then he bit the tip of his finger and dripped a drop of blood into the giant python's mouth. When the drop of blood entered, the giant python's pupils suddenly constricted. Yi Xian was stunned. It was effective? He carefully looked at the giant python. The giant python was sticking out its tongue at him, its eyes filled with desire. It still wanted blood. Yi Xian blinked and then dripped another drop of blood into the giant python's mouth. At this moment, the giant python suddenly trembled in excitement, but there was no change. Just like that, Yi Xian observed for about an hour, but the giant python still didn't change. Yi Xian was disappointed. Although his blood was of the highest quality, it was useless against monsters. After all, he was human. After the disappointment, Yi Xian pondered for a long time. In the end, he rode on the giant python's body and tied a piece of cloth around its head. Then, he used his scorpion tail to gently poke the giant python's weak spot. Let's go! The giant python trembled and then flew out with a whoosh. Yi Xian grabbed the cloth tightly. He didn't know where the giant python was taking him. In any case, it was fine as long as there was someone to lead the way. He just wanted to get out of this desert and find a water source. About an hour later, the giant python suddenly stopped. Yi Xian frowned. At this moment, the sand in front of him suddenly trembled. Soon, giant pythons crawled out of the sand. There were more than 20 of them. Seeing this scene, Yi Xian's expression changed. Damn, this guy brought me to its nest. What the hell? The giant pythons looked at Yi Xian with fierce eyes and flicked their tongues. Yi Xian's eyelids twitched. I'm screwed. At this moment, the giant pythons were about to attack. Yi Xian suddenly held the scorpion tail in his hand and pressed it against the giant python's head. However, the giant pythons didn't stop. Instead, they charged even faster. Yi Xian narrowed his eyes. Could it be that my reputation is going to be buried in the mouths of these snakes today? With his current strength, he was definitely not a match for these giant pythons. He couldn't even face one of them head-on. At this moment, the giant python beneath him suddenly roared. With this roar, the giant pythons in front of him stopped. Seeing this, Yi Xian was stunned. This giant python's identity wasn't ordinary. Yi Xian hurriedly said, "Take me out of here." The giant python turned its head to look at Yi Xian. Yi Xian said, "Can you understand me? Take me out of here and I'll let you go." The giant python flicked its tongue and then swam into the distance. The giant pythons beside it hurriedly followed. About 6 hours later, Yi Xian saw a mountain range. Seeing the mountain range, Yi Xian immediately smiled. Looking at the mountain range, Yi Xian felt a lingering fear in his heart. If it weren't for this giant python leading the way, he would probably have died in that desert. Because there was no water, no food, and no direction. Just as they were about to leave the desert, the giant python suddenly stopped. Yi Xian looked at the giant python and said, "Have your subordinates retreat." The giant python looked at Yi Xian and flicked its tongue. Yi Xian pointed at the giant pythons in the distance and waved his hand. The giant python turned its head and glanced at them. The giant pythons retreated one after another. Yi Xian jumped off the giant python and ran into the distance. The giant python did not chase after him. It just watched Yi Xian escape in the distance. After a while, Yi Xian entered the dense forest. The giant pythons still did not leave. At this moment, Yi Xian ran out of the dense forest in the distance. Behind him was a pack of black wolves. Seeing Yi Xian, the giant python's eyes suddenly showed a fierce glint. At this moment, Yi Xian in the distance suddenly stopped. He pointed at the group of pythons and then quickly gestured to the wolves. Giant python. In the distance, Yi Xian gestured very quickly and was a little excited. Gradually, the wolves suddenly looked at the group of pythons. When they saw the group of pythons, the wolves suddenly roared in unison. Soon, the wolves suddenly rushed towards the group of pythons. The group of pythons suddenly became a little chaotic. Yi Xian had already slipped away. Soon, the group of pythons and the wolves fought. Outside the tavern, Uncle Jiang looked at Amu standing at the side. Amu chuckled and said, "The group of pythons deliberately sent him to the wolves, but they did not expect that the wolves are extremely sensitive to their territory. When they see them, they will definitely be vigilant." Moreover, he pointed at the pythons and added fuel to the fire, which made the wolves think that the pythons came to invade. Uncle Jiang said softly, "With wisdom alone, you can't get out of there." Amu looked in front of him and said softly, "Of course not. However, without wisdom, it is even more impossible to get out." Uncle Jiang said in a deep voice, "Girl, how did you get out of that desert back then?" Amu shook her head and chuckled, "It's all in the past, don't mention it." Uncle Jiang asked again, "You, the two high priests and him, who walked out of that desert faster?" Amu said softly, "In terms of speed, I am the fastest. In terms of strength, the former high priest is the strongest because she killed all the way out of that desert. In terms of being the most shameless, he is—" Hearing this, Uncle Jiang shook his head and smiled. "He should be out of that dense forest by now." Amu shook her head. "You're wrong." Hearing this, Uncle Jiang frowned slightly. He turned his head and looked in front of him. In the black hole, he could see Yi Xian. The battle between the pythons and the wolves could be said to be extremely tragic. There were corpses everywhere, and this time, the wolves won. Because they were fighting on their own territory. After the living wolves left, Yi Xian appeared out of nowhere. Looking at the python corpses on the ground, Yi Xian shook his head, then took out his scorpion tail and began to cut open the stomachs of the pythons. Take out the snake gall. This thing was a great tonic. After a while, Yi Xian took out more than 20 snake galls. Not only that, he also peeled off the snakeskin and made a snakeskin coat to wear. He also made a pair of snakeskin shoes. After doing all this, Yi Xian looked at the mountain range in front of him. He knew that this mountain range must be extremely dangerous, and it was impossible for him to pass through it with his current ability. A moment later, Yi Xian suddenly picked up some dried leaves beside the dense forest. In front of the tavern, Uncle Zhang looked at Amu. What is he going to do? Amu fell silent. Uncle Zhang turned his head to look at the black hole. In the image, Yi Xian was holding a piece of wood and spinning it vigorously. About 15 minutes later, the wood in front of him burned. Uncle Zhang said softly, "He's going to make a fire to cook." At this moment, Yi Xian suddenly made a torch and lit it outside the dense forest. Seeing this scene, Uncle Zhang said in shock, He's going to burn the mountain. Is he crazy? Isn't he too cruel?" Amu looked at Uncle Zhang with a strange expression. "Why are you sympathizing with those monsters?" Uncle Zhang. P.S. I've been reflecting recently. Back when I first started writing, when I was writing the Invincible Sword domain, not only did I update 3 times a day, but I would also break out every few days. But now, many times I ask myself, I might have forgotten my original intentions. However, later on I thought about it. Back then I was single. At that time, there were no external factors affecting me. Moreover, at that time, I was naive and did not know what healthcare was. But ever since I met some irregular readers, my life changed dramatically. They taught me how to do healthcare, and learned some things that were difficult to speak of. In conclusion, it's not that I've forgotten my original intentions, but that life is like this. On this path, there will be many temptations and problems. I'm not afraid of being confused for a moment, but I'm afraid of being confused for a lifetime. Everyone, don't worry, I won't be arrogant because I'm poor and can't be arrogant. At most, I'll be arrogant occasionally. Please vote. Chapter 1096. After a while, the dense forest started burning. The raging fire spread towards the depths of the dense forest. Soon, the roars of monsters could be heard in the dense forest. As for Yi Xian, he lay at the edge of the desert, motionless. He just looked at the dense forest. Soon, many monsters escaped from the dense forest. There were all kinds of monsters. Many of the demon beasts had even escaped with the fire. For a moment, the entire dense forest was filled with screams. Not only did the fire not stop, it even spread deeper. In front of the tavern, Uncle Zhang looked at Amu. Isn't it a little inappropriate for him to do this? Amu was speechless. After the fire burned for a day, the entire dense forest was barren. During this period, countless monsters fled. Yi Xian did not stay idle either. During this period, he ate a lot of snake meat and snake gall, greatly replenishing his physical strength. The next day, the fire was still spreading. Yi Xian did not stay idle either. After recovering his physical strength, he put a bag of sand on his waist. Not only that, he also collected some of the python's liquid. He did not know if the liquid was poisonous, but he mixed it with the sand anyway. After doing all this, he secretly followed some monsters to escape. He did not dare to follow too closely, but followed from afar. Just like that, Yi Xian followed some monsters along the edge of the desert and walked towards the right. About 4 hours later, Yi Xian followed the monsters around the dense forest and entered a mountain range. However, at this moment, the roars of monsters were everywhere in this mountain range. Battle! Because after countless monsters entered this mountain range, it was equivalent to entering the territory of other monsters. They were fighting. Along the way, Yi Xian was careful. He had to avoid being discovered by some monsters. An hour later, Yi Xian looked up. At this moment, the sky was getting dark. It was getting dark. Yi Xian's face darkened. He had to find a place to take refuge. About an hour later, Yi Xian found a cave. He entered the cave and found some branches to cover the entrance of the cave. Inside the cave, Yi Xian sat cross-legged on the ground and drew a large circle on the ground. According to Amu, this was the Wu clan's road to hell. Purgatory. These 2 words were the key, and they had to be circled. Yi Xian knew that this place was definitely not as simple as it seemed. It would definitely be several times more dangerous than what he encountered now. In any case, he had to be mentally prepared. Not only did he have to be mentally prepared, but he also had to be prepared to deal with it. And his ultimate goal was to complete this path. In order to complete this path, he had to figure out where the destination was. Otherwise, it would be useless even if he walked for 100 years. In this path of purgatory, there were definitely demon beasts with higher spiritual intelligence. But the problem was that a demonic beast with spiritual intelligence was also extremely powerful. This was a difficult problem. After a while, Yi Xian leaned against the mountain wall and fell asleep. He needed to maintain his strength at all times. Late at night, Yi Xian suddenly woke up. He quietly walked to the entrance of the cave. Outside the cave, there was the roar of demon beasts. Yi Xian listened carefully. Demon beasts that dared to roar in the middle of the night were definitely not simple demon beasts. And he had to figure out the direction of these demon beasts. Otherwise, if he entered the territory of these demon beasts the next day, he might be finished. After about an hour, Yi Xian basically figured out the general direction of these demon beasts. When the sky brightened, he left the cave and continued forward. Along the way, he saw some demon beasts' corpses, but he successfully avoided the territories of some powerful demon beasts. After about an hour, Yi Xian came to a valley. When he entered the valley, a moo who was outside the pub narrowed his eyes. In the valley, Yi Xian looked around. It was very quiet. Yi Xian did not hesitate and slowly retreated. If it was too quiet, there must be a demon. And at this moment, there was a sudden movement in the bushes behind him. Yi Xian's expression changed. He took the opportunity to roll far away, but it was still a little too late. A sharp long thorn pierced through his left shoulder, and a stream of blood splattered out. After Yi Xian rolled on the ground, he quickly stood up. In front of him was a 7-colored spider. The spider was very big, even taller than him. The spider's legs were extremely sharp, like swords. Seeing this 7-colored spider, Yi Xian suddenly narrowed his eyes. This thing was definitely not something that those wolves and pythons could compare to. Yi Xian quietly placed his left hand that was wrapped in cloth into the sandbag at his waist. At this moment, the 7-colored spider suddenly rushed towards Yi Xian. Yi Xian narrowed his eyes, turned around, and fled. Seeing Yi Xian flee, the 7-colored spider quickly chased after him. But at this moment, Yi Xian, who had only taken 2 steps, suddenly stopped, turned around, and threw a handful of sand. The 7-colored spider hesitated too quickly, and it was directly hit by the sand. Yi Xian quickly leaped and kicked the 7-colored spider's lower body. Bang! With an explosion, Yi Xian was directly sent flying. It was too hard. Yi Xian quickly got up, turned around, and ran into the valley. At this moment, the 7-colored spider suddenly roared because its eyes were slightly red and swollen. The sand was poisonous. The 7-colored spider charged towards Yi Xian. He was definitely unable to outrun so many legs, and it wasn't long before the 7-colored spider caught up to him. Meanwhile, Yi Xian suddenly stopped, and the 7-colored spider charged towards him. Yi Xian's eyes narrowed slightly. When the 7-colored spider arrived in front of him, he rolled on the ground, causing the spider to miss. On the other hand, Yi Xian suddenly stomped his feet on the ground and charged forward. At the same time, he grabbed the last handful of sand and sprayed it at the 7-colored spider's eyes. At the sight of this, the 7-colored spider hurriedly closed its eyes. Meanwhile, Yi Xian took advantage of the momentum to roll forward and arrive behind the 7-colored spider, and then he stabbed the scorpion tail at its anus. The 7-colored spider's eyes suddenly opened wide, and it was on the verge of splitting apart from rage. Meanwhile, Yi Xian swiftly pulled out the scorpion tail, and then he rolled backwards and pulled apart the distance between him and the 7-colored spider. The 7-colored spider stood on the spot in front of Yi Xian while it roared incessantly in pain. After struggling for a short moment, the spider slowly fell to the ground and didn't move at all. Yi Xian instantly heaved a sigh of relief when he witnessed this scene. Even though his cultivation and physical body were sealed, he still had his battle instincts. Of course, the main reason was that the demon beasts he'd encountered so far weren't particularly formidable. If it was like the demon beasts he'd encountered in the variant beast scripture, then all his schemes would be useless. Yi Xian glanced at his left chest, and it was still bleeding. Yi Xian glanced at the surroundings, and then he found some grass and crushed it before applying it to his chest. After the bleeding stopped, Yi Xian gazed at the 7-colored spider's corpse. He walked over to the corpse and dissected it. In the end, he took out a gallbladder that was filled with green liquid. He wrapped the gallbladder with his snakeskin clothes, and then he gently poured a drop on the ground. As soon as it fell to the ground was instantly corroded. Yi Xian's eyes lit up when he saw this. That's good stuff. He carefully put the gallbladder on his waist, and then he looked at the valley. He hesitated for a moment before he walked towards the top of the valley. He had to figure out his surroundings right now. It didn't take long for Yi Xian to arrive at the top of the valley, and his expression sank when he saw his surroundings. There were endless mountains all around him. He couldn't see the end at all. How do I get out? At this moment, Yi Xian was slightly lost. The most terrifying thing wasn't the difficulty, but the lack of direction. Because he didn't know how to leave this place. Give up? If he gave up, then he could leave right away. However, how disappointed would Amu be? Moreover, if others could walk out of this place, why couldn't he, Yi Xian? Not to mention anything else, Amu could walk out of the Wu clan's path of purgatory. He would definitely be able to walk out of this place. Yi Xian took a deep breath. At this moment, he made up his mind. Yi Xian stayed in the valley for about an hour before he began to walk down the valley. Then, he used the 7-colored spider's leg to cut many smaller branches. He sharpened the branches into sword tips, and then he turned the bark into ropes. Of course, this was extremely difficult for him now because he only had one hand. After an entire day, Yi Xian dug a big hole at the entrance of the valley. He buried many sharp thorns in the hole, and then he covered the hole with some leaves. A trap. Fortunately, although the beasts here were much stronger than ordinary people, they didn't have much intelligence and couldn't be considered as real experts. Otherwise, it would be useless no matter what he did. After setting up the trap, Yi Xian left the valley. About an hour later, he suddenly ran back. Behind him, there was a beast that wasn't particularly fast. The beast was shaped like a pig, and its body was more than twice the size of a normal pig. Because of this, its speed was relatively slow. It madly chased after Yi Xian. Soon, Yi Xian arrived in front of the valley. When he arrived at the trap, he jumped over it, and the beast fell directly into the trap. However, the thorns couldn't pierce through the beast's skin. However, at this moment, Yi Xian suddenly jumped into the trap. Before the monster could react, Yi Xian took out a tree bark rope and wrapped it around the root of the monster, which happened to be holding on to the 2 eggs. Then, he gave it a hard tug. Awoo! The demonic beast immediately let out a shrill scream, but it didn't dare to move, because if it did, it would pull the egg. At this moment, Yi Xian had already climbed up, but his hand was still holding onto the tree bark rope. Yi Xian looked at the beast and motioned for it to get up. The beast did not budge. Yi Xian suddenly pulled on the tree bark rope, and the beast immediately let out another blood-curdling scream. Very quickly, it slowly climbed up from inside. It looked at Yi Xian. In its eyes, other than a fierce glint and anger, there was also fear. Yi Xian unceremoniously sat on the beast's back. His hand didn't let go of the bark rope. He pointed to the distance. Go! The beast didn't move. Yi Xian pulled the eggs, and the beast rushed out with a roar. Its speed was extremely fast. Outside the tavern, Amu lowered his head. He couldn't bear to look at it. Uncle Jiang was stunned for a long time, then looked at Amu. He hesitated for a moment, then said, "His actions are really a bit." Chapter 1097. Uncle Jiang didn't continue because he didn't know what to say. In fact, he wanted to say that Yi Xian's trick was a bit despicable. But on second thought, in that environment, survival was the most important. As long as he could survive, any trick was fine. As for Amu, although she lowered her head, there was a smile at the corner of her mouth. She wasn't that pedantic. In the mountain range, Yi Xian was riding the monster and walking slowly. He didn't dare to let the demon beast speed up. If it was too fast, it might attract the attention of other demon beasts. Yi Xian just rode the demon beast and walked. He didn't know where the end was, so he could only keep moving forward. Anyway, there must be a path in front of the mountain. On the back of the demon beast, Yi Xian looked into the distance, deep in thought. His thoughts were very clear now. The first point was to survive. The second point was to figure out this place. The third point was to leave this place alive. Give up? He really didn't think of giving up. As Amu said, it was hard to persevere, but easy to give up. And he, Yi Xian, wouldn't give up. When he was in Qing City, he didn't have any external objects, and he didn't have any backing. Didn't he survive? His heart. Amu said that he had lost his heart. At this moment, he suddenly understood what Amu meant. What was his heart? It was to constantly improve and move forward bravely. Confidence came from one's own strength. Although external objects and identity were also part of one's strength, the confidence obtained by relying on external objects and identity was illusory. The strength of others was not something to be confident about. The reason why Amu was disappointed was because Yi Xian felt that everything he had now was because of the woman in the plain dress. In fact, this itself was a sign of lack of confidence. Of course, he had to admit that the woman in the plain dress did help him a lot. Without her, he would have died 1,000 times. Then there was a problem. Why did he need help? Was he really weak? Thinking of this, Yi Xian smiled. He had to say, in the face of those ancient powerhouses such as Arrow and the others, he was really weak. Weak was weak. He was weak. He liked to play dirty. He liked to use external objects. He had received a lot of help because of the relationship between the plain-dressed woman and the sword sect. Not only was he not ashamed of it, he was even proud of it. Without the plain-dressed woman, without the sword sect, without the prophet, what was he? What the hell was that? It was worse than a fart. Thinking of this, Yi Xian smiled. Karma? To hell with karma. In this life, he was Yi Xian and no one else. If he had a backer, he would rely on them. If he didn't, he would rely on himself. Of course, he still had to rely on himself. His fist was the strongest. When he thought up to here, the scorpion tail in Yi Xian's hand suddenly trembled violently, and then it emitted a light sword cry. Seeing this scene, Yi Xian was stunned. A moment later, he suddenly burst into laughter. At this moment, he understood what it meant by, all things are swords. With a sword in the heart, everything can be a sword. Swordsman, swordsman, are you not a swordsman without a sword? No. Swordsman cultivated the heart, not the sword. With a sword in the heart, what cannot be a sword? A sword cry suddenly rose from Yi Xian's body into the sky. Second layer of the mortal realm. At this moment, a powerful sword intent swept out from Yi Xian's body. Outside the tavern, Uncle Jiang narrowed his eyes and looked at Amu. This is... Amu slowly closed her eyes, clasped her hands together, and silently chanted an unknown witchcraft. A moment later, a mysterious force suddenly fell on Yi Xian's body. Boom! The sword intent around Yi Xian was suddenly suppressed, but this time, the sword intent actually resisted. The more it was suppressed, the stronger the resistance. Yi Xian held the scorpion tail in his hand, looked at the sky, and said with a smile, Amu, with this stab, your witchcraft will be ineffective. Outside the tavern, Amu looked in front of her, silent. Her witchcraft could not suppress the second layer of the mortal realm swordsman. One must know that Arrow was only at the second layer of the mortal realm. Of course, she could use powerful witchcraft, but what was the point? At this moment, in the mountain range, Yi Xian suddenly retracted his scorpion tail, and the sword intent around him flowed back into his body like a tide. At this moment, Yi Xian's swordsmanship cultivation was once again sealed. Amu looked at Yi Xian on the screen. Yi Xian smiled and said, Amu, if you can complete this trial with the cultivation of an ordinary person, so can I. After saying that, he rode the demonic beast and galloped into the distance. In front of the tavern, Uncle Jiang suddenly said, Actually, he didn't have to seal his cultivation. Breaking through in the path of purgatory was not against the rules. Amu smiled and said, Confidence. Uncle Jiang looked at Amu, and Amu smiled and did not speak. In the mountain range, Yi Xian rode the demonic beast and galloped. At this moment, he was a little arrogant. Who am I afraid of? At this moment, the demonic beast under him suddenly stopped, and the next moment, a black shadow suddenly rushed in front of him. The speed was extremely fast, and before he could react, he felt a pain in his chest, and then his whole body was sent flying. This time, he flew a full 10 feet, and finally landed heavily on the ground. Although his chest was in pain, Yi Xian did not dare to stay idle. He immediately flipped over, and in front of him, stood a demonic beast. The demonic beast had a human body, a wolf's head, 4 legs, and 3 arms. Yi Xian narrowed his eyes slightly. This demonic beast was intelligent. The demonic beast glanced at him, and then directly bit his mount. The mount let out a scream, and in an instant, It was eaten up by the demonic beast, not even leaving bones. After eating, he looked at Yi Xian. Yi Xian glanced at the demonic beast's crotch, and did not speak. The demonic beast was about to make a move, but at this moment, Yi Xian suddenly said, "Wait." The demonic beast looked at Yi Xian, and did not make a move. It really was intelligent. Yi Xian looked at the demonic beast. "I am a human, and I will not snatch your territory." The demonic beast looked at Yi Xian and licked its lips. Yi Xian's eyelids twitched. "Damn, I did not snatch your territory, but you actually want to eat me." At this moment, the demonic beast suddenly rushed towards Yi Xian. Its speed was so fast that it made Yi Xian's expression change instantly. However, Yi Xian's reaction was not slow. The moment the demonic beast rushed towards him, he suddenly took out the spider gallbladder and threw it. The demonic beast did not slow down, and it punched the gallbladder. Bang! The gallbladder shattered, but the venom directly sprayed onto the demonic beast's fist, and in an instant, the demonic beast's fist started to rot. The demonic beast was stunned as it looked at its rotting fist. Right at this moment, Yi Xian had suddenly appeared in front of it, and then Yi Xian's fist smashed towards its head. The demonic beast roared furiously, and its other two fists directly smashed towards Yi Xian. At this moment, Yi Xian's body suddenly bent backwards as if it had been broken, and he avoided these three punches. At the same time, his right leg suddenly kicked the demonic beast's crotch. Roar! The demonic beast clamped its legs together, its eyes opened wide, and its mouth opened so wide that a fist could be stuffed in. Yi Xian did not stop. His left hand suddenly pushed against the ground, and his entire body moved forward while sticking close to the ground. After that, he stabbed the scorpion's sting towards the demonic beast's anus. Ah! The demonic beast's eyes almost split apart from rage, and its entire body jumped up and down on the spot in extreme pain. After Yi Xian struck the demonic beast, he took the opportunity to roll to the right and put some distance between him and the demonic beast. In the distance, the demonic beast rolled ceaselessly on the ground and howled in pain. Even a demonic beast would find that kind of pain unbearable. Most importantly, no demonic beast would fight like this in a fight between demonic beasts. Therefore, the demonic beast had never expected that Yi Xian would use such a move. The demonic beast struggled on the ground and howled in pain. Moments later, Yi Xian suddenly walked in front of the demonic beast. The demonic beast roared furiously when it saw Yi Xian, and its eyes revealed a ferocious light. Yi Xian looked at the demonic beast. "Do you want to die?" As soon as he finished speaking, he took out his scorpion sting and placed it across the demonic beast's crotch. He grinned. "As long as you shake your head, I'll cut it off, heh." The demonic beast's body trembled subconsciously, and besides the ferocious light in its eyes, there was also fear as it looked at Yi Xian. Yi Xian smiled and said, "I can spare your life, but you have to answer my question. Is there a problem?" The demonic beast looked at Yi Xian and did not speak. Yi Xian's right hand suddenly exerted force, and a hole appeared on the demonic beast's body. The demonic beast was horrified and hurriedly rolled backwards. Yi Xian walked in front of the demonic beast. "Is there a problem?" The demonic beast hurriedly shook its head. It looked at Yi Xian as if it was looking at a devil. Yi Xian nodded slightly. "It's good that there's no problem. Come, let me ask you, where is this place?" The demonic beast looked at Yi Xian. 10,000 Beast Mountain Range. Able to speak human language. Yi Xian looked at the demonic beast. "How can you speak human language? Shouldn't demonic beasts speak beast language? How can you speak human language?" The demonic beast's eyelids twitched. "Human, I am a demonic beast with intelligence." Yi Xian frowned slightly. "But you are also a demonic beast. How can you speak human language?" The demonic beast suddenly said angrily, "Can you stop talking about this?" After saying that, it seemed to have thought of something and couldn't help but take a step back. Yi Xian looked at the demonic beast and then said, "Have you met other humans?" The demonic beast shook its head. Yi Xian asked again, "What is outside the 10,000 Beast Mountain Range?" The demonic beast shook its head again. "I don't know." Yi Xian frowned. The demonic beast hurriedly said, "I have never left the 10,000 Beast Mountain Range, so of course I don't know." Yi Xian was silent for a moment, then said, "What is the strongest demonic beast in the 10,000 Beast Mountain Range called?" The demonic beast looked at Yi Xian. "Giant ape, huge and incomparably powerful. Yi Xian asked, "Where is it?" The demonic beast pointed to the right, Ape Mountain. Yi Xian thought for a moment, then asked again, "Can I beat it?" The demonic beast looked at Yi Xian, not saying anything. Yi Xian stood in the same place, deep in thought. A moment later, Yi Xian turned around and left. And his direction was the Ape Mountain. Seeing Yi Xian leave, the demonic beast immediately heaved a sigh of relief. At this time, Yi Xian turned back and walked in front of the demonic beast. "You have never seen a human before?" The demonic beast nodded. "Never." Yi Xian blinked. "Then do you know who I am?" The demonic beast looked at Yi Xian and shook its head. Yi Xian grinned, then turned around and left. Chapter 1098. In front of the tavern, Uncle Jiang looked at Amu. "What is he going to do?" Amu smiled. "Uncle Jiang, why don't you take a guess?" Uncle Jiang said in a deep voice, "That giant ape is not an ordinary monster. It is a monster king. His moves will not be effective against it." Amu was silent. Uncle Jiang suddenly asked, "How did he deal with the monster king in the 10,000 Beast Mountain?" Amu smiled without saying a word. Uncle Jiang shook his head. "This girl can't even tell Uncle Jiang?" Amu said softly, "Let's see how he will deal with that giant ape." Uncle Jiang nodded. "I am also a little curious." In the mountain range, Yi Xian swaggered towards the giant ape mountain. Along the way he was deep in thought. In his mind, there were countless possibilities. Every possibility must have a way to face it. And the reason why he came to find the giant ape was that he wanted to take a gamble. For now, the most terrifying thing about this path of purgatory was not the monsters here, nor was it the disappearance of cultivation and physical strength, but the mentality. Before this, he had great strength, but after coming here, all his strength disappeared. This kind of difference was the most terrifying. After a person reached a certain height, he did not want to fall again, and if he fell, how many people could withstand such a difference? Life was full of ups and downs, and not everyone could withstand such ups and downs. State of mind. Normal state of mind. His mind was clear. Yi Xian smiled, and he sped up. After a while, Yi Xian arrived at the boundary of the giant ape mountain. Yi Xian walked towards the depths of the giant ape mountain. He did not hide, but walked openly. About an hour later, Yi Xian arrived in front of a small mountain, and at this moment, the ground in the distance suddenly trembled, and then, a huge monster stood up from the foot of the small mountain. Giant ape. It had to be said that this giant ape was very big, but compared to the violent ape that he brought out from the mutated beast scripture, it was too much smaller. But in this place, this giant ape was very terrifying. The giant ape looked down at Yi Xian. "Human! Humans!" Yi Xian looked at the giant ape and said with a smile, "All right." The giant ape suddenly punched at Yi Xian. The punch landed like a mountain pressing down on them. Yi Xian's expression didn't change. "The Wu clan! The Wu clan!" The giant ape's fist stopped 5 feet away from Yi Xian's head. The great ape squatted down and looked at Yi Xian. "Human, what did you say?" Yi Xian looked at the giant ape. "I'm from the Wu clan." The giant ape narrowed his eyes. "The Wu clan's trial." Yi Xian nodded. The giant ape said, "What do you want to say?" Yi Xian looked at the giant ape and said with a smile, "If I'm not wrong, you're trapped here, right?" The giant ape stared at Yi Xian. "What are you trying to say?" Yi Xian said with a smile, "Do you want to leave this place?" The giant ape was expressionless. "This place is pretty good." Yi Xian sneered. "Pretty good? Forgive me for being blunt, but do you know how abundant the spiritual qi outside is?" The giant ape looked at Yi Xian and didn't say anything. Yi Xian said, "The spiritual qi outside is dozens of times more abundant than here. I'm telling you, with your talent and ability, if you were outside, you'd be at least a ruler." The giant ape frowned. "Ruler?" Yi Xian said seriously. "It's a kind of realm." As he spoke, he glanced at the surroundings and said softly, "If I'm not wrong, none of our ancestors were able to walk out of this place, right?" The giant ape looked at Yi Xian and didn't say anything. Yi Xian said with a smile, "The demonic beasts here are generally weak. It's not that their talent is not good, but their environment is not good. If they were outside, they'd be 10 times stronger than they are now."
The giant ape was expressionless. Why are you telling me this? Yi Xian walked in front of the giant ape. Do you want to change? The giant ape said indifferently, change? Human, are you joking with me? Yi Xian looked at the giant ape. The Wu clan trapped you here. Don't you want to leave? The giant ape asked, can you represent the Wu clan? Yi Xian said with a smile, as long as I can leave, I'll be the Wu clan's high priest. At that time I can change. The giant ape looked at Yi Xian. How do I know if you're telling the truth or not? Yi Xian smiled. Why don't you gamble? The giant ape was silent. Yi Xian said again, I'm not your opponent, but I dare to come here. Why? Because I want to gamble. Why don't I dare? The giant ape stared at Yi Xian. Once upon a time, many years ago, a woman came here and slaughtered my great ape clan. Yi Xian's eyelids twitched. It couldn't be a moo, could it? No, it shouldn't be a moo. A moo didn't like killing. It should be the high priest before a moo. Yi Xian said in a low voice. Then what do you think? The giant ape looked at Yi Xian. She gives me the feeling that she's crafty. To put it simply, she doesn't seem like a good person. Yi Xian was speechless. The giant ape said again, I won't trust humans. As it spoke, it slowly clenched its right hand. Yi Xian smiled. Don't you want to go out and see the outside world? The giant ape looked at Yi Xian. Yi Xian looked straight at the giant ape. If you help me, I can change my bloodline and break through the shackles of my own bloodline. The giant ape narrowed its eyes. Why should I believe you? Yi Xian spread his hands. I've said it. I can choose to gamble. Of course, I can also choose not to gamble and continue to stay here. Then, when the next trial taker comes, I can either die of old age here. The giant ape was silent. Yi Xian said with a smile, why don't you bet on it? There's no loss anyway. What do you think? The giant ape looked at Yi Xian. But I don't believe you. Yi Xian smiled. Think about it. Why did the Wu clan let me come here for a trial? Would they let a shameless person participate in the high priest's trial? I'm sure that my character and talent have been recognized by the Wu clan. That's why they let me in. Do you understand? The giant ape was silent. Yi Xian said again, in talking with them, I discovered that I should know a lot. In fact, with all due respect, a decision right now can change the fate of the great ape clan. Why not give it a try? The giant ape was still silent. Obviously, he was hesitant. At this time, Yi Xian continued, I'm already invincible in the 100 Beasts mountain range, but I'm sure I've reached my bottleneck. I can tell you that advancing in this place is as difficult as ascending to the heavens. But if I can get out, I can guarantee that it will be a piece of cake. Moreover, if you help me, I'll remember this favor for the rest of my life. I'll repay it. The giant ape looked at Yi Xian. I can't get out. Yi Xian was puzzled. Why? The giant ape said softly, even if I let myself out, it'll be even more dangerous behind the 10,000 Beasts mountain range. Yi Xian said with a smile, so what? My cultivation and strength are sealed, but I'm not afraid. With such formidable strength, what's there to be afraid of? Follow me. We'll kill our way out. The giant ape was silent for a moment. Then he said, Human, can you swear an oath to me? Yi Xian looked at the giant ape. What oath? The giant ape said, if we're able to get out, then we have to escape this place with the giant ape clan. Yi Xian said, all right. If we're able to get out, then I won't go back on my word. If I do, then I'll never die a natural death. The giant ape nodded slightly. All right. Yi Xian heaved a sigh of relief when he heard this. This fellow has agreed. Fortunately, this fellow's intelligence isn't low. If it's too low, then I wouldn't be able to convince him at all. Yi Xian spoke in a low voice. What's behind 10,000 Beasts mountain range? The giant ape replied. The abyssal swamp. A group of ferocious colossal crocodiles live there. I wouldn't be afraid of them on land, but I'm no match for them in the swamp. Yi Xian fell silent for a moment before he said, how many formidable demon beasts are there here? I want those that are strong. The giant ape gazed at Yi Xian. What do you want to do? Yi Xian said, just the two of us are too weak.
How many demon beasts can we bring with us? The giant ape shook his head. I don't know. Yi Xian smiled. Go give it a try. Call all the formidable demon beasts here. The giant ape glanced at Yi Xian, and then he turned around and left. Around 2 hours later, the entire mountain range suddenly started trembling as countless demon beasts charged towards the giant ape. It didn't take long for numerous demon beasts to appear in front of Yi Xian, and there were a few thousand of them. Moreover, the one in the lead was the giant ape. There were over 30 other enormous apes behind it. The giant ape gazed at Yi Xian. These demon beasts are willing to follow me. Yi Xian nodded slightly. Needless to say, as the leader of this place, the giant ape did have some ability to rally others. The giant ape said, What do we do now? Yi Xian turned around to look towards the distance, and he said softly, To the abyssal swamp. As soon as he finished speaking, he gazed at the giant ape. Can I sit on you? You know, I'm very slow. The giant ape glanced at Yi Xian. He didn't let Yi Xian sit on him, but he let Yi Xian sit on a large ape demon beast, and he sat on the ape's shoulder. Just like that, under the leadership of Yi Xian and the giant ape, a group of demon beasts charged towards the abyssal swamp. Outside the pub, Uncle Jiang looked at Amu. He's instigating a rebellion. Amu was silent. Uncle Jiang said in a deep voice, He's doing this. This won't do. Those demon beasts are reared by us. Amu suddenly said, Is there a rule in the trial that we can't join forces with demon beasts? Uncle Jiang hesitated, and then shook his head. There's no such rule. Amu smiled. Isn't that it? Uncle Jiang smiled bitterly. Lass, what he's doing will cause chaos inside. This guy doesn't play by the rules at all. If he continues to do this, I really don't know what he's going to do inside. Amu was silent. Uncle Jiang said in a deep voice, Aren't you going to say something? Amu said softly, What do I have to say? Uncle Jiang said in a deep voice, He has become the king of the mountain. I'm afraid that if he continues to do this, he'll unify the trial world. Amu. In the mountain range, Yi Xian led the group of demon beasts and ran wildly. Soon, they arrived at the abyssal swamp. Chapter 1099. In front of Yi Xian was a swamp. Abyssal swamp. On the surface, this swamp looked very calm, but Yi Xian knew that there were hidden dangers in this swamp. Yi Xian looked at the great ape not far away. Can you ask their leader to come out for a chat? The great ape pondered for a moment, walked to the edge of the swamp, and punched the swamp. Boom! With this punch, the swamp in front of it directly exploded. Soon, the entire swamp boiled, and soon, countless abyssal giant crocodiles surfaced. Seeing this scene, the great ape retreated several zhang. In this swamp, it was no match for these abyssal giant crocodiles. Yi Xian suddenly said, Who is their leader? The great ape shook its head. I don't know. At this moment, a huge giant crocodile suddenly climbed out of the abyssal swamp. This giant crocodile was more than twice the size of the other giant crocodiles. Yi Xian looked at the giant crocodile in front of him, and said with a smile, Can we talk? The giant crocodile looked at Yi Xian. Human. Yi Xian nodded, Wu clan. The giant crocodile stared at Yi Xian. Human, what do you want? Yi Xian said, I want to talk. The giant crocodile sneered. Talk about what? Yi Xian looked at the giant crocodile. Do you want to leave this world? The giant crocodile narrowed its eyes. What do you mean? Yi Xian chuckled. I mean, I can take you out of this world. The giant crocodile said, Why do we have to leave this world? Yi Xian smiled. Because the outside world spirit qi is at least 10 times more abundant than in this world. If you go outside to cultivate, you will get twice the result with half the effort. The giant crocodile looked at Yi Xian. It's a human. Yi Xian smiled. So what? Are humans bad? There are good humans too, aren't there? Saying that, he pointed at the great ape. If you don't believe me, ask it, I'm a good person. Giant ape. The giant crocodile looked at the giant ape. The giant ape hesitated for a moment before nodding. He's indeed good. He's trustworthy. The crocodile looked at the ape. Trust humans? The great ape nodded. Why not make a gamble? If he succeeded, he could bring the giant crocodile clan away from this world. If he failed, he wouldn't lose anything, right? Or do you want to stay here forever? The giant crocodile fell silent. The giant ape continued, with your talent, you will at least reach the sovereign realm in the outside world. Yi Xian was speechless. The crocodile frowned. Sovereign realm. The giant ape hurriedly nodded. It is a kind of realm, extremely powerful. Did the giant crocodile really want to stay here forever? Even if he didn't think for himself, he had to think for the giant crocodile clan. Once we reach the outside world, with abundant spiritual energy, with our talent, let alone the sovereign realm, we can even reach the realm above the sovereign realm. As it spoke, it looked at Yi Xian. Right. Yi Xian hurriedly nodded. Yes. The giant crocodile looked at Yi Xian. What is above the sovereign realm? Yi Xian blinked then said, above the sovereign realm, there is the legendary self-release. The giant crocodile looked at Yi Xian. If I go out, I also have the chance to reach the legendary self-release? Yi Xian nodded. Absolutely. The giant ape suddenly said, Sir, it is not that our talent is not good, but the environment is not good. With our talent, if we go out, we can definitely surpass our ancestors. At that time, even if the Wu clan is in front of us, we can destroy them with a flick of our fingers. Yi Xian looked at the giant ape and blinked. Feeling Yi Xian's gaze, the giant ape looked at Yi Xian. Is there a problem? Yi Xian hesitated, then said, If I become the high priest, I will become friends. Everyone can live in peace. What do you say? Everyone can live in peace. What do you say? After all, many people die in war. The giant ape nodded. At that time, I can give you face. Yi Xian. At this time, the giant crocodile suddenly said, Human, can I trust you? Before Yi Xian could speak, the giant ape suddenly said, Absolutely. The giant crocodile looked at the giant ape. The giant ape said, This human is not bad. Moreover, not all humans are bad. There are good people among humans, right? Moreover, this is the last chance for our two clans. We have to grasp it. The giant crocodile fell silent. At this time, Yi Xian suddenly raised his left arm. For freedom. The giant ape was stunned, then raised his left hand and roared, For freedom. Behind him, countless monsters roared in unison. Freedom. They were equivalent to being trapped in a cage. This feeling was too suffocating. For freedom. Freedom. The giant crocodile was silent for a long time. Suddenly, it looked up at the horizon and said softly, For freedom. As soon as its voice fell, countless giant crocodiles in the abyssal swamp roared in unison. Looking at the abyssal swamp in front of him, Yi Xian smiled slightly. He walked in front of the giant crocodile and said, What is behind the abyssal swamp? The giant crocodile said in a deep voice, Sinful Canyon. Yi Xian frowned slightly. What kind of place is that? The giant crocodile's expression was cold. There is a group of night owls living there. At night, they will come out of their nests to hunt. At this time, the giant ape suddenly said, Yes, my 10,000 Beast Mountain range is often visited by them. Yi Xian nodded. Let's go to Sinful Canyon. As he spoke, he looked at the giant crocodile. Can you go ashore? The giant crocodile said, Of course, but our strength will be reduced on land. Yi Xian smiled. It's fine. Let's go. Just like that, Yi Xian led a large group of demon beasts toward Sinful Canyon. After an hour, Yi Xian arrived at Sinful Canyon. Even though it was daytime, Sinful Canyon was pitch black, and it was daunting. Yi Xian gazed at Sinful Canyon and said, Can we talk to them? The giant ape suddenly walked to the entrance of the canyon and smashed its fist against the ground. Bang! The ground shook violently. Meanwhile, a sharp and ear-piercing cry suddenly resounded from within the canyon, and it didn't take long for countless black shadows to charge out of the canyon. Yi Xian's expression instantly changed when he saw this. What are these fellows trying to do? Aren't they going to talk? Meanwhile, the giant ape suddenly said, What should we do? Yi Xian said, Retreat. The giant ape immediately waved his arm. Soon, the group of demon beasts retreated like a tide. Before long, they retreated to the abyssal swamp. However, those nightingales didn't seem to have any intention of stopping and chased them fiercely. Yi Xian's expression sank. He pointed his finger at the sky, but there was no movement. Yi Xian was a little embarrassed because he just realized that he didn't have any cultivation. If it was outside, this finger would have wiped out these dregs in front of him. Yi Xian looked at the giant ape. Can we beat them? The giant ape said, we can try. Yi Xian nodded. Go. The giant ape suddenly roared in anger. It leaped up and slammed into the sky. This collision was like a small mountain, and its momentum was terrifying. Rumble. Countless nightingales were killed by the giant ape, but there were just too many of them. Yi Xian suddenly raised his left hand and pointed to the sky. Fight for freedom. Kill. After saying that, he directly rushed out. Behind him, countless demon beasts rushed out one after another. Although there were many nightingales, there were also many demon beasts behind Yi Xian. If they fought, they wouldn't be at a disadvantage at all. Especially that giant ape, with its rough skin and thick flesh. Those nightingales couldn't do anything to it. In front of the tavern, Uncle Jiang watched the group of demon beasts fight in silence. Amu was also silent. After a moment, Uncle Jiang suddenly said, why are those demon beasts following him? Amu said softly, freedom. Uncle Jiang hesitated and wanted to say something but stopped. Amu said, what do you want to say, Uncle Jiang? Uncle Jiang shook his head. I just feel that this kind of trial has lost its meaning. Amu looked at Uncle Jiang. Uncle Jiang is wrong. It's a big mistake. Uncle Jiang looked at Amu. What do you mean? Amu said softly, unless you have invincible strength, intelligence is often more important than strength. This trial not only tests one's state of mind, but also one's intelligence. Except for the previous high priest, who didn't play some tricks when we came out. It's just that he played more thoroughly. Uncle Jiang was silent. Amu slowly closed his eyes. No one knew what he was thinking. Beside the abyss swamp, the battle had already ended. Those nightingales had already retreated into the Grand Canyon because the day was not good for them. Beside Yi Xian, the giant ape said in a low voice, they will definitely attack again at night. Yi Xian suddenly said, how many casualties did we suffer? The giant ape looked around. More than 100 demon beasts. More than 100. Yi Xian's face darkened. After a moment, Yi Xian said softly, bury them properly. The giant ape shook his head. Troublesome. Yi Xian suddenly said, they are our comrades. Comrades. Saying so, he looked at all the demon beasts. From now on, we don't care about race. No humans, no giant crocodiles, no demons, no wolves. We are all together. I tell you, since you chose to believe me, I will definitely bring you out of this place. Outside, I will let all the demon beasts be reborn. I will do what I say. With Xiao Linger around, letting these demon beasts be reborn was not an empty promise. The giant ape looked at Yi Xian. Really? Yi Xian stared at the giant ape. Really? The giant ape looked at Yi Xian. Human, I know you are not an ordinary person. Here your cultivation is sealed, your strength is inferior to us, but outside, your strength is definitely stronger than us. I hope I can do what I say. Bring us out of this place. Yi Xian looked straight at the giant ape. I will do what I say. The giant ape nodded. From now on, we will fight for you. Yi Xian suddenly said, light a fire. Light a fire? The demon beasts in the field were stunned. Yi Xian looked in the direction of the Grand Canyon and said fiercely, since they don't want to talk, then I won't talk. Light a fire. Saying so, he turned and started to light a fire. About half an hour later, Yi Xian led countless demon beasts towards the Grand Canyon of Nifas, and these demon beasts all carried torches. Yi Xian was now sitting on the shoulder of the giant ape, his left hand holding a burning torch. Burning Grand Canyon. In front of the tavern, Uncle Jiang suddenly said, actually, he can already pass. Amu shook his head. After the Grand Canyon, it is just the beginning. Uncle Jiang slightly squinted his eyes. What is there? Amu softly said, sinners. P.S. I will return to Guiyang tomorrow, then I can write in peace. If there are any typos, one wrong word, my dick will be shorter by an inch. Chapter 1100. Yi Xian led his army of demon beasts to Nifa's gorge, and then Yi Xian ordered countless demon beasts to toss torches towards the gorge. In an instant, the entire gorge was set ablaze, and countless nightbirds charged out. Yi Xian roared furiously. Fight! As soon as he finished speaking, he took the lead and charged out. Even though he didn't have a cultivation, his combat instinct wasn't bad. However, the night birds didn't attack, and they just flew into the sky. In next to no time, all the night birds vanished into the horizon. Yi Xian and the demon beasts were stunned when they witnessed this scene. What's going on? Meanwhile, the flames within the gorge had suddenly vanished. Yi Xian frowned slightly. Suddenly, a stone flew out from within the gorge, and it was so swift that Yi Xian's expression instantly changed. Suddenly, the giant ape stood in front of Yi Xian, and then it suddenly smashed its fist forward. Bang! The stone pierced through the giant ape's right arm, causing blood to spray. At the same time, the giant ape was blasted flying. The expressions of all the demon beasts here instantly changed when they witnessed this scene. After all, the giant ape was the strongest amongst them. Yi Xian gazed at the gorge. A woman walked out slowly from within it. She wore a black dress, had long hair that hung loosely on her shoulders, and her hands and horns were tied with black iron chains. Uncle Zhang's expression instantly changed when he saw this woman. Amu's face was expressionless. The woman gazed at Yi Xian without any expression on her face, and she didn't speak a word. Yi Xian spoke in a low voice. "May I know your name, senior?" The woman glanced at the demon beasts and said, "Are you a participant of the Wu clan's trial?" Yi Xian nodded. The woman suddenly waved her right hand. Before Yi Xian could react, he was sent flying. This time, he flew a few dozen feet away. As soon as he landed on the ground, he instantly spat out a mouthful of blood. Yi Xian slowly crawled up. He stared at that woman who pointed at the demonic beasts as she mocked. "Just a simple path of refinement, yet you actually gathered such a rabble. Where's your face?" Yi Xian wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth and looked at the giant ape. "Take all the demonic beasts and retreat." The giant ape shook its head and stood in front of Yi Xian. At this time, the woman waved her right hand. Boom! The giant ape was sent flying hundreds of feet away before crashing heavily into the ground. At this moment, its body was covered in cracks and blood flowed freely. Seeing this, the demonic beasts revealed looks of fear. The woman glanced at the giant ape, her face expressionless. And, with that said, she looked at Yi Xian. This generation of trial takers is really disappointing. Yi Xian ignored the woman and walked to the side of the giant ape. The giant ape was lying on the ground with blood flowing incessantly from its body. Yi Xian softly said, "I'm sorry." The giant ape looked at Yi Xian. "This is our choice." With that said, it wanted to stand up. However, it discovered that it was unable to do so. That attack directly caused it to be seriously injured. Yi Xian stood up and turned to look at that woman. "Your target is me?" The woman's lips curled into a disdainful smile. "Not qualified." Yi Xian nodded slightly and looked at the demonic beasts. "You guys go back." Those demonic beasts looked at Yi Xian without saying a word. Yi Xian said, "Bring the giant ape back." "Go back." The woman suddenly sneered. "Aren't you thinking too much?" Yi Xian turned to look at the woman. "They don't pose any threat to us, right?" The woman looked at Yi Xian. "I don't like the sight of them. Can't I?" Yi Xian stared at the woman. At this moment, the woman suddenly smiled. "You want to restore your strength?" Yi Xian did not say a word. "Woman," Z suddenly said, "even if I restore my strength, I can still destroy them. However, seeing that you care so much about these beasts, I can give you a chance. In your current state, take one move from me. If you can take it, I will let them go." Yi Xian shook his head. "I can't take it." The woman smiled. "Then let the Wu clan's high priestess go out now, or let her restore her strength." Yi Xian narrowed his eyes. "I know the Wu clan's high priestess." The woman nodded. "I know a lot of things that can help her restore her strength. Then we can try to see if she can stop me." Yi Xian looked up at the horizon. In front of the tavern, Amu was silent. In front of the canyon, Yi Xian's face darkened. Amu must know what happened here. Amu did not respond. What did this mean? The woman slowly walked towards Yi Xian. "Have you thought it through?" Yi Xian said in a deep voice. "Who the hell is it?" The woman looked straight at Yi Xian. "It doesn't matter who I am." Yi Xian pointed at the monster beasts. They have no enmity with me.
The woman smiled.
A bunch of ants.
I don't like the sight of them.
Yi Xian narrowed his eyes. A moo, let me restore my strength. However, there was no response. Yi Xian looked up at the horizon. Let me restore my strength. At this moment, a moo's voice suddenly sounded in Yi Xian's mind. Even if you restore your strength, you can't beat her. Yi Xian said in a deep voice. Can you stop her?
A moo said. You can't.
Yi Xian frowned. You can't either?
A moo said. Yes.
Because she is the Wu clan's previous high priest. She is also the best fighter among all the high priests in history. Not to mention, even Shen Gong is not her match. The previous high priest. Hearing this, Yi Xian was stunned. Yi Xian looked at the woman. She is the Wu clan's previous high priest.
The woman smiled.
Yes.
Yi Xian said in a deep voice. Then why here?
The woman looked at Yi Xian. None of your business.
At this moment, the woman suddenly clenched her right hand.
With this grip, the giant ape in the distance was lifted up by her. The giant ape's eyes were wide open. Blood splattered all over its body. It was about to explode. Yi Xian suddenly said, I'll take this. The woman looked at Yi Xian. The corners of her mouth curled up. Are you sure? Yi Xian nodded. Yes. The woman smiled. Do you think I will go easy on you? Yi Xian looked at the woman. Don't you think so? The woman smiled. I'll give you one last chance. Let the Wu clan go. It's still not too late. Yi Xian grinned.
Why do you have so much bullshit to say?
The woman loosened her right hand. The giant ape fell to the ground. Yi Xian looked at the giant crocodile. Take it and leave. The giant crocodile looked at Yi Xian. It did not say a word. At this moment, the woman suddenly punched out. Boom. Yi Xian's eyes widened. His abdomen was punched through. Blood splattered everywhere. Yi Xian stood rooted to the spot. In front of the tavern, Uncle Jiang was also rooted to the spot. A moo clenched his fists. He did not say a word. In front of the Nifa's canyon, the woman looked at Yi Xian. She smiled. Do you think I will go easy on you?
No, I won't.
With that, she retracted her right hand. Yi Xian fell to the ground. At this moment, the giant crocodile suddenly turned around and left with the beasts. Yi Xian lay on the ground. His eyes were empty. Was this the end of him? At this moment, the woman walked in front of Yi Xian. She looked at Yi Xian. Do you regret it? Regret? He did not regret it. In the beginning, he brought the beasts with him out of selfishness. However, he never thought of killing them. Because therefore, when he saw the woman, he decisively ordered the beasts to retreat. He knew that the beasts were no match for this woman.
At this moment the woman said, Look, the beasts are running away.
Yi Xian said softly, They are not running. Are they waiting for death here? The woman looked at Yi Xian. So, I ask, is it worth it? Because we can leave this place. Yi Xian looked at the woman. I don't like it when others die because of me. The woman shook her head. It is not a relative. It is just an evil beast. Yi Xian slowly closed his eyes. To me, if others don't betray me, I won't betray them. At this point he frowned. He could still speak? What's going on? Yi Xian opened his eyes. He looked at his abdomen. There was no wound. Yi Xian looked at the woman. Is this a test? The woman sneered. Test? You are thinking too much. Yi Xian said in a deep voice. What do you mean? The woman walked to the side and sat down. She looked at Yi Xian. The Wu clan has a high priest now. They are not here to test the high priest. If I am not wrong, they are the witch servants of the current high priest. Yi Xian nodded. Yes. The woman said, they are not pure members of the Wu clan. Yi Xian said, the Wu clan is also human. The woman looked at Yi Xian. Did the high priest tell you that? Yi Xian nodded. The woman was silent for a long time. Then she said, she sees further than I do. Yi Xian looked at the woman. Senior, why are you imprisoned here? The woman looked at Yi Xian. Does it have anything to do with me? Yi Xian said quickly, Amu told me that the high priest is the best fighter in the history of the Wu clan. In other words, no one in the Wu clan can defeat him. In that case, no one should be able to trap him. So, if I am not wrong, Senior must have trapped herself here. The woman glanced at Yi Xian. Smart. Yi Xian said in a deep voice. Senior, why did you imprison yourself here? The woman was silent. Yi Xian walked to the woman's side. Can't you tell me? The woman said calmly. By hook or by crook? Yi Xian frowned. What do you mean? The woman looked at Yi Xian. When I became the high priest, I disregarded the lives of my clansmen for some benefits. I killed many of them. In my opinion, sacrificing some people in exchange for some benefits is completely worth it. Yi Xian was silent. The woman looked at Yi Xian. What do you think? Yi Xian shook his head. I beg to differ. If it were me, I would not sacrifice my followers for some benefits. No benefits are more precious than life. The woman looked at Yi Xian. Yi Xian said, So Senior blamed yourself and imprisoned yourself here? The woman shook her head. I don't think I was wrong. Yi Xian was speechless. At this time the woman said, But my master said I was wrong. He told me to meditate in seclusion here, but I don't think I was wrong. What's wrong with sacrificing a few for the benefit of the many? Yi Xian shook his head. You're wrong. The woman looked at Yi Xian. I wasn't wrong. Yi Xian said, But your thoughts were right. Hearing this, a strange look flashed in the woman's eyes. You also think I wasn't wrong? Yi Xian said in a deep voice, My original intention was good because I thought about the Wu clan. I didn't have any selfish motives. I just wanted to benefit the Wu clan. What's wrong with that? The woman suddenly stood up. She looked at Yi Xian with a trace of admiration in her eyes. Well said. I didn't expect you to be such an honest person. At this moment, her eyes were full of spirit. She was no longer as lifeless as before. Because in countless years, this was the first person to say she wasn't wrong. Chapter 1101. Yi Xian looked at the former high priest and said, I have something to say. It might not sound nice, but I don't know if I should say it. The woman looked at Yi Xian. Just say it. Yi Xian nodded. Your idea and your original intention are not wrong, but your method is not right. The woman said, What do you mean? Yi Xian said in a low voice. You said that sacrificing a few Wu clan members in exchange for benefits for the majority of Wu clan members. But have you ever thought about how unfair it is to those who are sacrificed? The woman fell silent. Yi Xian continued, If you were given a choice, if you were asked to sacrifice yourself in exchange for the Wu clan's benefits, you would definitely agree, right? The woman looked at Yi Xian. Yes. The Wu clan's benefits come first. Yi Xian said, But have you ever thought that not all the Wu clan members have the same idea as you? More than anything else, they probably want to live. The woman fell silent. Yi Xian continued, Fairness. The woman looked at Yi Xian. Fairness. Yi Xian nodded. As the high priest of the Wu clan, you can decide the life and death of countless Wu clan members with a single thought. It's precisely because of this that you have to be fair. You said that some Wu clan members should be sacrificed in exchange for the benefits of more Wu clan members. Let me ask you, are these sacrificed people the weak ones? The woman nodded. Yi Xian said, May I ask, are these weak Wu clan members your people? The woman looked at Yi Xian. Yes. Yi Xian nodded. Then that's right. No matter how weak or strong they are your people. They are the people you should protect as the high priest. Do you agree with this? The woman said, Yes. Yi Xian continued, Not everyone is as great as you. Most of the people of the witch tribe wanted to live, not be sacrificed. You are the high priest of the Wu clan. You have the heart to contribute to the Wu clan. But think about it, if you were just an ordinary Wu clan member and someone wanted to sacrifice you in exchange for benefits for other Wu clan members, would you be willing? The woman fell silent. Yi Xian looked at her and said seriously, Your original intention and idea are right. Because you are doing this for the Wu clan members. But your way is wrong. The great priest protects the people of the sorcerer tribe, and in the great priest's heart, the people of the sorcerer tribe should not be divided by strength. No matter how weak they are, the great priest is like a god in his heart. They trust you so much, how can you sacrifice them? What if they have to be sacrificed? The woman asked suddenly. Yi Xian looked at her. If that happens, I choose to fight. We will fight together. All the Wu clan members will live and die together. The woman looked at Yi Xian and said nothing. Yi Xian said with a smile, Are you trying to say that my decision will let more Wu clan members die? The woman shook her head. I understand what you mean. With that, she looked up at the sky and said softly, Master, as he said, my way is wrong. As soon as she finished speaking, the iron chains in her hands suddenly became illusory. Seeing this, the woman was stunned. Then she said in a trembling voice, You forgive me? But there was no response. 2 streams of clear tears suddenly flowed out of the woman's eyes. She said in a trembling voice, I should have apologized to you. But I am proud. When have I ever bowed to others? Still no response. Yi Xian said softly, Senior. The woman gazed at Yi Xian. I was an orphan. It was Master who pitied me and took me back. She taught me how to read, practice martial arts, and teach me witchcraft. Because I was an extraordinary genius, and my natural talent could be said to be the strongest expert in the history of the Wu clan. Over time, I became more and more arrogant. Especially after I passed through the path of trials with ease. I looked down on all the experts in the world. But it was exactly because of my arrogance and pride that I almost brought harm to the entire Wu clan. Master died because of me at that time. Since then, I've trapped myself here. But I did it out of guilt and not because I felt that I was really wrong. As she spoke, she closed her eyes slowly. Now that I think about the look in Master's eyes when she left all those years ago, I know that she was definitely very disappointed in me. Yi Xian said, Then have you thought about how you're making her even more disappointed by running away now? The woman nodded. I can't run away anymore. Yi Xian said, Are you going to leave? The woman nodded. The knot in my heart has been resolved. It's time to leave. Yi Xian hurriedly said, Take me with you. The woman gazed at Yi Xian. You're in the trial. Yi Xian said seriously, If you take me with you, then it's considered my ability, isn't it? The woman pondered for a moment and said, You're right. But I can't take you with me. Yi Xian was slightly puzzled. Why? The woman gazed at Yi Xian. Do you know why I didn't kill you before? Yi Xian asked. Why? The woman said softly. Because of your character. You're a witch's attendant. If your character isn't good, then I'll kill you on behalf of your shaman. Also, that demon beast friend of yours, I didn't hurt it. What you saw was witchcraft. Yi Xian fell silent. The woman continued, You're a witch's attendant of the Wu clan, so you're one of us. Moreover, witches' attendants have a respected status. If you abandoned those demon beasts just now, then who knows if you wouldn't betray the Wu clan in the future. But you didn't abandon those witches' attendants. Your high priest has good judgment. Yi Xian said in a low voice, I'm very weak. The woman smiled and said, So what? Who said that witches' attendants must possess formidable strength? Moreover, if your strength isn't enough, then you can improve. But if your character isn't good, then it's difficult to improve. Yi Xian hesitated for a moment, and then he said, Why don't you take me with you? The woman grinned. You can rely on your own ability to walk down this path. If you walk down this path, then you'll obtain the respect of the Wu clan. At that time, the Wu clan won't respect you because of your high priest, nor because of your identity as a witch's attendant. Yi Xian thought for a moment and then he said, Then I'll walk down this path. The woman smiled and said, Take care. With that, she was about to leave. At this moment, Yi Xian suddenly said, After you leave this place, will you become the high priest? The woman smiled and said, Take a guess. With that, she disappeared on the spot. In the scene, Yi Xian sighed in a low voice. That was no longer something he could control. Yi Xian walked towards the distance. At this moment, a pitch-black pen suddenly fell in front of him. Keep this pen. In the future, if you're in danger outside, use this pen to write the word, come. Speak and I'll come. Yi Xian blinked, and then he hurriedly put away the pen. The high priest of the Wu clan was the best at fighting, and even Shin Gong couldn't defeat her. She was a super fighter. After putting away the pen, Yi Xian turned around and left. In front of the tavern, the woman appeared in front of a moo. Amu looked at the woman in front of him and didn't speak. Uncle Jiang hurriedly bowed respectfully. The woman glanced at Amu and said with a smile, "You've chosen a good person." With that, she turned around and left. Amu suddenly said, "The Wu clan needs you." The woman didn't look back. "I'll be here when you need me." After saying that, she disappeared. Amu didn't speak for a long time. Yi Xian returned to the abyss swamp again. When he saw Yi Xian, Zhu Yuan hurriedly rushed in front of him. Sure enough, Zhu Yuan was fine. Seeing this scene, Yi Xian was also relieved. He patted Zhu Yuan's thigh. "It's good that you're fine." Giant Ape nodded slightly. Yi Xian glanced at the monsters. "You guys stay here. I'll walk the rest of the way by myself." The Giant Ape frowned. "You promised us." Yi Xian smiled and said, "You misunderstood me. I mean, I'll go ahead first. If there's any danger, I'll come back to find you. But now, there are too many monsters. It's not good to attract too much attention." The Great Ape hesitated for a moment before saying, "Your current strength." Yi Xian smiled. "It's fine. I'll be a little wretched." Giant Ape still wanted to say something, but Yi Xian suddenly said, "Don't worry. No matter what the outcome is, even if I die, my friend will let you out. I can promise you this." Giant Ape's expression was complicated. "Then be careful. If you need us, come back to find us." Yi Xian nodded. "All right. Everyone, take care." With that, he turned around and left. Giant Ape looked at Yi Xian, who left, and said softly, "There are good and bad humans too." Giant Crocodile said, "Can we really get out?" Zhu Yuan nodded. "Yes." At this moment, a woman suddenly appeared. The person who came was Amu. Amu looked at Giant Ape and the others. "Come with me." Giant Ape said, "You are?" Amu said softly, "The high priest of the Wu clan. I can bring you out of here." Giant Ape hesitated and said, "Can we wait?" Amu looked at Giant Ape and Giant Ape said in a deep voice, "Maybe he will need our help." After looking at Giant Ape for a long time, Amu smiled, "All right." With that, she turned around and disappeared. In the distance, Yi Xian passed through Nifa's canyon. After Nifa's canyon, there was a plain. The plain was boundless. Yi Xian continued to walk forward. After walking for about an hour, Yi Xian saw a river. Yi Xian was overjoyed and quickly rushed over. As soon as he reached the river, he wanted to drink water. However, he resisted. He carefully observed the bottom of the river in front of him. After confirming that there were no dangerous monsters, he directly leaned down and drank water crazily. He was extremely thirsty along the way. One must know that he was now an ordinary person. At this moment, a soft voice suddenly came from the side. "Drink slowly, no one is fighting with you." Hearing this voice, Yi Xian's expression changed drastically. Almost at the same time, the black hole in front of the tavern suddenly disappeared. Uncle Zhang's expression changed and he looked at Amu. Amu narrowed her eyes and formed a seal with both hands, silently chanting an incantation. A moment later, a black hole appeared in front of her, but there was nothing in it. Amu's expression also changed at this moment. Amu's expression was frighteningly gloomy. "An uninvited guest has entered. P.S. Even now, there are still readers asking about my gender." Chapter 1102. An Uninvited Guest. Beside the river, Yi Xian turned his head and saw a woman squatting not far away from him. The woman was wearing a simple cotton dress, and her hair was draped over her shoulders. She was holding a cup of water in her hand and was gently wiping her face. Washing her face. Yi Xian's expression became solemn when he saw the woman. What kind of deity was this? Could she be the former high priest of the Wu clan? Yi Xian hesitated for a moment before walking to the woman's side and bowing slightly. "Greetings, senior." The woman turned around to look at Yi Xian. At this moment, Yi Xian saw the woman's appearance. The woman's appearance was really very ordinary, but it wasn't ugly. It was just an average appearance. The woman smiled. "Sit." Yi Xian wasn't afraid and sat by the woman's side. The woman took out a white handkerchief and wiped her face lightly. After that she said, "Have you heard of the sixth dimension?" Hearing this, Yi Xian's expression instantly changed. The woman chuckled. "Don't be shocked. There are 3 dimensions, 4 dimensions, and 5 dimensions. Naturally, there are 6 dimensions. What do you think? Yi Xian asked. According to what Senior said, does that mean there are 7 dimensions and 8 dimensions? The woman smiled. What do you think? Yi Xian shook his head. My strength doesn't allow me to think about these things? The woman shook her head. You have to think about it. At least think about the 6th dimension. Yi Xian said in a low voice. Senior, I really don't understand why there are 2 dimensions, 3 dimensions, and 4 dimensions in this universe. The woman suddenly said. Aren't people divided into different classes in the mortal world? Yi Xian looked at the woman. The woman smiled. A long, long time ago, some people shouted the slogan of equality for all living things. Actually, this idea isn't wrong. But can all living things really be equal? In reality, people are divided into different classes. What do you think? Yi Xian fell silent. The woman continued. This universe is also divided into different classes. In this vast universe, it's very normal for high-level civilizations to enslave or even destroy low-level civilizations. If you're weak, you'll be beaten. This is an unchanging truth. Yi Xian was curious. Is the 6th dimension enslaving us? The woman smiled and said, It's not that simple. It's more complicated. Yi Xian looked at the woman. Senior, why are you telling me so much? The woman smiled and said, Originally, you were given quite a bit of time. However, things have changed now. Yi Xian frowned. What do you mean? The woman pointed at the river in front of her. Yi Xian looked at the river. The river suddenly turned into a galaxy, and in the depths of the galaxy, Yi Xian saw a familiar figure. A woman in a plain dress. The woman in the simple dress walked through the starry sky slowly. Yi Xian turned to look at the woman beside him. The woman said softly, Watch carefully. Yi Xian turned to look at the river. At this moment, the woman in the simple dress suddenly stopped. Not far in front of her, there was a stone tablet. On the stone tablet, there were 4 large words. Life Forbidden Zone. Life Forbidden Zone? Yi Xian frowned. He had heard of this place in the 4th dimension. It was a forbidden zone. However, he didn't go there. Why did the woman in the simple dress come here? The woman looked at the stone tablet with an expressionless face. On her fingertips, 1 black and 1 white sword qi revolved. At this moment, a phantom suddenly appeared not far in front of the woman in the simple dress. Yi Xian turned to look at the woman. This phantom is? The woman said softly. Just watch carefully. Yi Xian turned to look at the river. At this moment, the woman in the simple dress suddenly opened her palm. In her palm, a sword light condensed. The moment this sword light appeared, the entire starry sky lost its color. As for the phantom in front of her, it retreated tens of thousands of feet. The phantom suddenly raised both of its hands and quickly chanted something. At this moment, Yi Xian's expression changed. His body suddenly split open without any warning and blood splattered everywhere. At the same time, in the sky above the river, countless blood-red chains suddenly appeared. These chains were like a huge net that covered the sky. Beside Yi Xian, the woman watched quietly. She didn't say anything, nor did she do anything. In the starry sky, the woman in the simple dress's expression suddenly turned ferocious. The sword in her hand suddenly flew out. Chi! The phantom was instantly slashed into nothingness. At this moment, the mysterious power on Yi Xian's body disappeared. The blood-red chains in the sky also disappeared without a trace. In the starry sky, the woman in the simple dress had a ferocious expression. She held the sword in her right hand and her entire body emitted endless hostility. By the river, the woman suddenly said softly, They are threatening her. Yi Xian looked at the woman. Threatening her? The woman nodded. Using you to threaten her. Yi Xian's expression turned gloomy. Who are they? The woman said softly, They are related to the prophet, and the prophet is related to you. Yi Xian suddenly stood up. He looked at the furious woman in the simple dress. Don't worry about me. Kill them all. The woman in the simple dress suddenly turned to look at Yi Xian. The next moment, she appeared in front of Yi Xian. This wasn't a phantom. It was her true body. Almost at the same time, in the Tendo pawn shop, Xiao Dao, who was lying on the counter, suddenly looked up at the Wu clan. Her eyes were filled with horror. By the river. The woman in the simple dress looked at Yi Xian. I haven't left because I am worried about you. Yi Xian said in a deep voice. Worried about me? The woman in the simple dress said softly. You are still too weak. It is not safe in this world. Yi Xian smiled. Look, I am already at the second level of the mortal sword. The woman in the simple dress shook her head. Not enough. Yi Xian looked at the woman in the simple dress. You should believe in me. The woman in the simple dress looked at Yi Xian and didn't speak. Yi Xian said seriously, believe in me. I can walk this road alone. I can't rely on you forever. I don't want to rely on you forever. The woman in the simple dress still didn't speak. Yi Xian said again, I can do it. The woman in the simple dress walked to Yi Xian's side. She gently touched Yi Xian's cheek. I am afraid. I am afraid of losing you again. Afraid. Beside Yi Xian, the woman looked at the woman in the simple dress. They know this. That is why they deliberately provoked you. The woman in the simple dress narrowed her eyes. Her eyes were filled with killing intent. Yi Xian suddenly smiled. Then go and kill them. The woman said, this is what they hope for. Because once she leaves, there will be nothing in this universe that can threaten them. Yi Xian suddenly grabbed the woman's hand and smiled. You don't owe this universe anything. You don't owe me anything. I can feel that you really want to kill them, right? The woman in the simple dress nodded. Yi Xian smiled. Then go and kill them. The woman suddenly said, once she leaves, you will be in danger. Saying that, she looked at Yi Xian. This is a trap within a trap. Yi Xian didn't care about the woman. He looked at the woman in the simple dress. Do you believe in me? The woman in the simple dress said softly. I believe in you. But I want to give you more time. The woman suddenly said, if you stay here, this universe will be safe. He will also be safe. The woman looked at Yi Xian. I am leaving. Hearing this, the woman beside Yi Xian slowly closed her eyes. She knew that the woman in the simple dress had made her decision. The woman in the simple dress believed in Yi Xian. The woman really wanted to roar with rage. This man you believe in isn't reliable at all. But she knew that it was utterly useless. Because in the eyes of this invincible woman, this unreliable fellow was a treasure. Yi Xian suddenly asked, is the prophet related to me? The woman nodded. Someone is hiding in the shadows and controlling fate. Yi Xian asked, who? The woman shook her head. I don't know. I have to go up there to find out. Yi Xian hesitated for a moment and said, can you defeat him? The woman looked at Yi Xian. Your Qing is invincible. Yi Xian blinked. Amazing. The woman looked up into the starry sky. The myriad of living beings, the myriad of stars, and the endless universe all have their own fate. There are very few who can truly escape their fate. I used my sword perception to search for the source of fate in the fourth dimension to see who is controlling it. But the other party is too far away from me. I can't sense it. As she spoke, she looked at Yi Xian. If I want to deal with the karma source in you, then I must leave this place. Once I leave, you will have to rely on yourself for the rest of your journey. Yi Xian nodded. Don't worry and go. I will walk the rest of my journey well. The woman smiled lightly. I believe in you. Will you accompany me when I leave? Yi Xian smiled. All right. The woman waved her right hand, and she and Yi Xian vanished, leaving only the woman behind. The woman sat by the river. After a long period of silence, she said softly, the world is going to change. At the Wu clan. The woman brought Yi Xian to the Wu clan city. At this moment, a Mu appeared in front of Yi Xian. A Mu glanced at the woman and bowed slightly. Greetings, senior. The woman nodded slightly and did not speak. Yi Xian pulled the woman and said with a smile, I will take you to eat noodles. As he spoke, he pulled the woman and walked into the distance. A Mu hurriedly followed. Yi Xian left the Wu clan with the woman and a Mu and came to the affiliated city of Fu Wenzong, which was Fu City. Fu City was not big and was just a small city. The city was bustling with a lot of people. Yi Xian brought the woman and a Mu to a noodle shop. Yi Xian looked at the owner of the noodle shop and said with a smile, Owner, give me 3 bowls of noodles. The owner laughed and said, All right. Sir, please wait a moment. Yi Xian found a seat and sat down with a Mu and the woman. He looked at the woman and said, "Have you eaten noodles before?" The woman shook her head. "Never." As she spoke, she paused and said, "Do you have steamed buns?" Steamed buns. Yi Xian was stunned. Then, he stood up and left. After a while, he returned. In his hands were 2 steamed buns. Yi Xian handed the steamed buns to the woman. The woman picked one up and took a bite before saying, "Delicious." Yi Xian smiled and said, "You like to eat steamed buns?" The woman nodded. Yi Xian was just about to speak when a formidable pressure suddenly swept down from the horizon. Along with the appearance of this pressure, the entire Talisman City trembled violently as if an earthquake was occurring, and many people within the city were even pressed flat on the ground by this pressure. At this moment, a middle-aged man appeared not far from Yi Xian and the other 2. Seeing the person, Yi Xian was stunned. This person was none other than the godly craftsman. Shen Gong looked at Yi Xian and said with a smile, "Human King, I have been looking for you for a long time." As he spoke, he spread his hands. "I have completely recovered my strength. Unless the Tendo comes, no one can protect you." Yi Xian was speechless. Chapter 1103. Yi Xian's expression became a little odd. Beside Yi Xian, Amu lowered her head slightly. She gently nibbled on the steamed bun that Yi Xian gave her, not saying a word. The plain-dressed woman beside her was also nibbling on the steamed bun. From the beginning to the end, she did not look at Shen Gong. At this moment, Shen Gong suddenly looked at Amu. "Wu clan's high priest, don't you know a lot of witchcraft? Come, this god will give you a chance to perform witchcraft." Amu hurriedly shook her head. No. I can't beat you. You're the most powerful." Shen Gong narrowed his eyes and looked at the plain-dressed woman. When he saw her, he frowned, because he could not sense the aura of the plain-dressed woman. Shen Gong looked at the plain-dressed woman. "You look like you have a knack for it." Yi Xian lowered his head and nibbled on the steamed bun, not saying a word. The plain-dressed woman still ignored Shen Gong. Shen Gong stared at the plain-dressed woman. "I'll give you a chance to make a move." The plain-dressed woman still did not say a word. Shen Gong said again, "Since you're not making a move, then I'll make a move." With that said, he gently pointed at Yi Xian and the other 2 with a strange trident in his hand. A water dragon shot out. At this moment, the plain-dressed woman suddenly looked up at Shen Gong. Her left hand picked up a chopstick from the table. The next moment, the chopstick flew out. Chi! In an instant, the water dragon was destroyed. The moment the water dragon was destroyed, Shen Gong's expression changed dramatically. He suddenly pressed his hands down, and an invisible water region appeared in front of him. Water region. The reason why he directly took out his trump card was because he felt danger. The aura of death. However, the moment his water region appeared, it disappeared without a trace, as if it had never appeared. The chopstick was pressed against the area between Shen Gong's eyebrows. Shen Gong was stunned on the spot. The plain-dressed woman looked at Yi Xian. "Do you want to kill him?" Yi Xian shook his head. "I'll do it myself in the future." There was a trace of gratification in the woman's eyes. "You've grown up." Yi Xian smiled and said, "I can't always rely on you." The plain-clothed woman said softly, "Between you and me, there is nothing to rely on. However, you do need to grow. There are many things that you need to face by yourself. Life is life. Only when you experience it yourself can it be called life." Yi Xian nodded. "I'll remember it." At this time, Shen Gong suddenly said in a trembling voice, Are you a Tendo?" The woman in the plain dress did not say anything. Yi Xian got up and walked to the soup pot. The boss had already run away. Yi Xian scooped up the noodles from the pot and brought it in front of the plain-dressed woman and Amu. The plain-dressed woman looked at Yi Xian. Yi Xian smiled and said, "Try it." The plain-dressed woman nodded. She picked up the chopsticks and tasted the noodles. After a while, she ate another 2 mouthfuls. Then she looked at Yi Xian and said, "Not bad." Yi Xian smiled and looked at Amu. "You try it too." Amu nodded and started to eat. As for Shen Gong, he did not dare to move because the chopsticks were still on his forehead. The plain-dressed woman ate more and more and felt that it was good. Soon she finished the noodles and looked at Yi Xian. "Another bowl." Yi Xian laughed. "I'll cook for you." With that, he got up to cook the noodles. The plain-dressed woman looked at Amu. Amu said softly, "You can save this universe, right?" The plain-dressed woman shook her head. Amu said in a deep voice, "You're not willing to help." The plain-dressed woman looked at Amu and said, "I don't owe this universe anything. Moreover, this calamity is born from the heart. It's not something that humans can resist. From another perspective, the appearance of this calamity is not a bad thing." Amu smiled bitterly. "I know, but many people will die." The plain-dressed woman picked up the steamed bun and took a bite. "So be it. Amu." The plain-dressed woman glanced at Yi Xian, who was making noodles in the distance, and said softly, "As long as he doesn't die, it's fine." Amu said in a deep voice, "Senior, is there really a sixth dimension?" The plain-dressed woman shook her head. "I didn't pay attention to it." Amu was a little puzzled. "Why?" The plain-dressed woman took out a chopstick and drew a circle on the table. "No matter which dimension, they are all within this circle." Amu hurriedly sat beside the plain-dressed woman and said, "Senior means that they are all in the same universe?" The plain-dressed woman nodded. Amu frowned slightly. "Then why are there 3 dimensions, 4 dimensions, and 5 dimensions?" The plain-dressed woman asked, "We are all humans. Why are there different levels?" Amu was silent. The plain-dressed woman gently tapped the circle with her chopsticks. "The people above will not care about the life and death of the people below. Just like you, will you care about the life and death of the living beings in the 4th dimension?" Amu shook her head. Not to mention the 4th dimension, even in this 5th dimension, she only cared about the future of the Wu clan. The plain-dressed woman looked at Amu. "I don't want to interfere in his life, because I believe that he will walk a good path." Amu nodded. "I understand." At this moment, Yi Xian carried a bowl of noodles and placed it in front of the plain-dressed woman. The plain-dressed woman directly picked up her chopsticks. This time, she ate very quickly, and in a short while, she finished it all. Moreover, she even drank the soup. The plain-dressed woman put down her chopsticks and then looked at Yi Xian. "I'm leaving." Yi Xian was stunned, and then he said softly, "Will you come back?" The plain-dressed woman shook her head. "I will wait for you up there." Yi Xian thought for a moment, and then he nodded. "All right." The plain-dressed woman looked at Yi Xian. "After I leave, I won't be able to take care of you anymore." Yi Xian smiled. "Believe me, I will live to find you." The plain-dressed woman nodded, and then she opened her palm, and from the prison pagoda, a sword suddenly flew out. The plain-dressed woman held the sword, and then she looked at the horizon. In the next moment, she suddenly stabbed the sword towards the sky. "Open!" As her voice fell, bang! The distant starry sky suddenly split open. Yi Xian hurriedly said, "Can I ask you a question?" The plain-dressed woman nodded. Yi Xian said in a deep voice, "Are you an ordinary sword?" The plain-dressed woman shook her head. "No." Yi Xian was stunned, and then he said, "Then what realm are you at?" The plain-dressed woman leaned over to Yi Xian's ear. "I have no realm." As soon as she finished speaking, she suddenly transformed into a ray of light that shot into the sky, and it didn't take long for her to vanish amidst the starry sky. "She's gone." Yi Xian was slightly stunned as he watched the plain-dressed woman leave. He knew that the plain-dressed woman had really left this time. She had gone to the 6th dimension. Amu, who stood by Yi Xian's side, spoke softly. "The people up there have really infuriated her this time." As she spoke, she paused for a moment, and then she continued, "Of course, she probably feels that you can face everything by yourself." Yi Xian's eyes slowly closed. From this moment onward, he would really have to walk his own path in the future. Because the plain-dressed woman was gone. Right at this moment, Shen Gong, who stood nearby, spoke abruptly. "Who is she?" Yi Xian smiled. "Take a guess." Shen Gong stared fixedly at Yi Xian. "She's gone." Yi Xian nodded. Shen Gong suddenly sneered. "You still dare to be so arrogant after she's gone?" Yi Xian looked at Shen Gong. "Do you believe that I'll call her back?" Hearing this, Shen Gong's expression instantly changed. He glanced at Yi Xian. "Do you really think that I'm afraid of her? Just now, I just didn't use my full strength, and I was caught off guard by her. If I had used my full strength and fought her head-on, it's hard to say who would have won." Yi Xian and Amu were dumbfounded. Yi Xian turned to look at Amu. "In the future, if anyone says that I, Yi Xian, have the most shameless face in the world, I'll definitely beat him to death." Amu hesitated, and then said, "I've finally met someone who's even more shameless than you." "Yi Xian." Hearing Yi Xian and Amu's words, Shin Gong's expression was a little ugly. He was about to speak when Amu suddenly said, "She hasn't gone far yet." "Not gone far." Hearing this, Shin Gong's eyelids twitched. He looked at the starry sky, and a moment later, he looked at Yi Xian. "We'll settle our scores another day." With that, he turned and disappeared at the end of the horizon. Amu suddenly said, "You should have let her kill him just now because he's really not weak." Yi Xian smiled. "I know." Amu looked at Yi Xian, and Yi Xian said softly, "From now on, I'll have to rely on myself." Amu nodded. "Yes." Yi Xian opened his palm, and the executing heaven sword appeared in his hand. After looking at the executing heaven sword for a moment, he looked up at the horizon. At this moment, his mind was filled with the words of the woman in the plain dress before she left. The boundless realm. Is the boundless realm above the mortal sword? At this moment, Xiao Dao suddenly appeared in front of Yi Xian. Xiao Dao looked at Yi Xian. "You let her go?" Yi Xian nodded. "She left." Xiao Dao stared at Yi Xian. "Aren't you afraid of death?" Yi Xian smiled. "Why?" Xiao Dao shook his head. "Many people didn't make a move because of her. But once she leaves, those people will no longer have any scruples." Yi Xian asked, "Who are those people you're talking about?" Xiao Dao looked at Yi Xian. "You'll regret your decision." Yi Xian was a little puzzled. "Why?" Xiao Dao sneered. "Why? Do you really think that some people are being nice to you because of you? You're wrong. They're doing it because of her in the four-dimensional universe. Once she leaves now, do you think those people will give you face?" Just as he was about to speak at this moment, a shadow suddenly appeared in the sky. The person who came was someone Yi Xian was familiar with. Demon Yen. Demon Yen looked at the depths of the starry sky, and said softly, "Finally gone?" Yi Xian looked at Demon Yen. "Miss Yen, don't tell me that you're here to ask for the pagoda from me." Demon Yen blinked. "I'm not here to ask for it, I'm here to borrow it." "I'm just borrowing it. You won't be so stingy, right?" Yi Xian said in a deep voice. "I thought we could be friends." Demon Goose smiled and said, "Personally, I quite admire you, but I have to think for my clansmen." Yi Xian smiled. "If that study can really withstand the fifth dimension tribulation, wouldn't it be the same if you guys followed me?" Demon Yen looked at Yi Xian. "But in my opinion, that study can only guarantee the safety of one side. Moreover, I don't like to put the lives of my people in the hands of others. It's best for the fate of my people and myself to be in our own hands." As she spoke, she slowly clenched her right hand, and then smiled. "You can choose peace, because I also don't want to be stained with your blood. But let me tell you, if you don't want Fu Wenzong and the Worldwide Academy to be reduced to ashes, you'd better make a smart choice." Demon Yen still wanted to say something, but Yi Xian suddenly said, "I choose to fight." Demon Yen looked at Yi Xian. "Without her, you'll realize how laughable your so-called toughness is." As her voice fell, the space behind her suddenly split open, and then countless demons floated out.